It was a clear sunny day. People gathered around the yin-yang shaped ring to see what was going on. The defeated warrior kneeled before the winner and said that he surrendered. The victor asked the people around him if anyone else wanted to fight him. People looked at the winner and admired him. They saw that he was already level 200 and that he had good equipment. They were surprised that they had not heard of this warrior before. At that moment, the young man sitting at the computer said that they had no idea how much he had to pay to dominate the entire North. This young man was this warrior in the game. The guy said that he had defeated many monsters and spent 5 years to see how everyone admired and envied him today. He decided to reveal his name to all the players. The guy told everyone to memorize it, and just as he was about to say the name, the unfortunate thing happened. At the most crucial moment, at the moment of his greatness, the game stopped working and a message appeared on the screen. This message stated that the guy's account contained erroneous data and the account had been locked and that the use of illegal software was prohibited. The guy was furious at what he saw and punched the computer monitor, screaming that he had wasted 5 years of his life reaching level 200. He was furious that so much work had been wasted. The moment he punched the monitor screen, he was pierced by an electric shock. The guy screamed and started shaking from the electricity running through his body. Finally, when the guy was thrown off the screen, he fell on his chair and lost consciousness. You could see a light smoke coming from him and the discharge still running through his body. The next thing the guy felt was the feeling that he was falling. When he opened his eyes, he realized that there was no ground under his feet and he was flying down. The guy landed badly. He fell on the weapons rack, blowing it to pieces, swords and maces flying away from him without hitting him. The next moment the guy twisted in pain, falling to his knees. He tried to cough as if he had damaged his internal organs. There were people standing around him, looking down at him from above. One of them asked the other guy in astonishment if this wretch was the son of the ringleader. He was told that he was and that he could be reborn. One of them ordered him to get up, but he continued to lie motionless on the floor under the pile of weapons. The formidable man once again told the boy to get up. He looked stern and was not happy that the boy did not listen to him immediately. The boy raised his head reluctantly and looked at the man. He thought that maybe he was in a dream and none of this was real. This situation made the guy angry and he quickly got up from the floor, taking one sword that was lying next to him. The people who were there supported this formidable man. He turned out to be a captain. They said that this guy is not worthy of honor, despite the fact that he is the son of the leader and can no longer withstand the blow of the captain. The boy strode confidently toward the captain, sword held firmly in his hand. He said that he would destroy him in his sleep. The captain reached for his sword and asked the boy if he felt like a real man. Suddenly a young man with blue hair appeared between them. He turned to the boy and called him master and said that it was time to stop this and go home. Before he knew it, the son of the leader grabbed him and dragged him away against his will. At that very moment all his memories started to come back to him, his mother, his father, the place where they lived. This was definitely not a dream. The guy was shocked that he had somehow traveled to another world. All his memories of this life came back to him. He realized that the place he was in was very similar to the world he had lived in before. Decades ago there was a terrible disaster here, a major space storm. This space storm changed all living things, the landscape, plants, animals, many things mutated. The horrifying fact was that most people turned into bloodthirsty and violent zombies. At the same moment, due to this catastrophe, an extraordinary ability called star power was awakened in many people. A person with star power had an explosive power 100 times greater than the fighting power of a normal person. The good news was that the guy's father was the head of the city they were in and is a level 5 star power master. Sitting on the bed and sighing heavily, the boy reasoned that the father head is good, but why he himself is so pathetic and unable to improve. At this moment, the door opened and the father walked into his son Zhou Zhen's room, saying that he had come home. Zhou Zhen looked at his father and wondered if his father, who was ordinary in his memories, was a ringleader and a 5th-rank master. The ringleader put his hand on his son's head and told him not to take offense at his uncle, who was also upset about what was happening. Zhou Zhen thought that if it wasn't for his uncle, he wouldn't have entered this world. His father sat down next to his son and suggested that they try together again. Perhaps this time he would awaken his star power. Touching Zhen's back, the father said to act according to the breathing exercises to channel star power. At this moment, Zhen thought that even if he had no success in training, his father was very helpful and supportive. The boy decided that just because the old Zhen failed, it didn't mean that this Zhen wouldn't succeed. After 2 hours of trying and practicing with his father, Zhen still hadn't felt the star power. Zhen apologized to his father for never achieving star power. The head told him not to worry or dare to humiliate himself for it. His father also told him that even if Zheng couldn't train, it was no big deal and that no one would dare to tell him what to do as long as he was the head. The father told his son to have a good rest and left. As soon as the father left, a screen appeared in front of Zhen with the text that the system was activated and whether he wanted to enter the game. Zhen was surprised. He could not believe that in this world he was the same level 200 thief from the game he played for 5 years. He was confused and unsure about entering the game, but he decided and confirmed his choice. The following screen appeared in front of him with his level, strength, skills and more. It indicated that Zhen was only at the first level. Seeing all his stats, Zhen was upset and thought that he was pathetic. Besides, he was not in the game now and had no idea how to increase his level. At that moment, Zhen heard a voice telling him it was time to go to dinner. The guy replied that he wasn't in the mood and wouldn't be having dinner. In response, he heard that he shouldn't behave like that, because he has the opportunity to do so, and many people outside don't have the opportunity to feed themselves. Being in a bad mood, Zhen only wanted to repeat once again that he will not have dinner, as he had time to raise his head and saw his attractive interlocutor. A beautiful young girl appeared in front of him. On her characterization screen, it was written that her name was Zhou Zhen and she was not of the martial class. Zhen's face turned red and he couldn't take his eyes off the girl. He was surprised that he had such a beautiful girl living at home. Zhen decided to join the dinner and together with Su and his father, they sat at the round table in the dining room. Entering the game mode, the guy was able to see the skill and level plates of other people. Sitting next to his father, he looked at his characteristics, but could not recognize their level, as the level was apparently too high. Based on the data he could see on these tables, Zhen thought that there were probably monsters outside the city. When the guy went to the streets of the city, he looked at the tables of other residents and came to the conclusion that his characteristics are a little better than normal people, and to increase the level he needed to find something that could protect him. Then a guy he already knew, Lan Shi, who was a level 2 warrior, appeared in front of Zheng. Lan Shi told him that the head told Zheni not to participate in the training, but he still came. Zhen pretended as if he didn't hear Shi's words, instead deciding to ask if there were any weapons here. Shi was surprised by Zhen's question. Responding to Zhenya's request, Xie led him to the local shooting range. The guys were just inspecting the area. Suddenly, another person spoke to Zheng. It was Yang Baeksun, a level 2 warrior. He was trying to make fun of Zheng, saying what a rare guest to show up here. Yan's friend who was standing behind him also decided not to miss the opportunity to make fun of Zhen, saying that he had really come to shoot. Zhen didn't hesitate and confidently told them that he had indeed come to shoot. Yang Baeksun was very surprised by his answer. When Zhen left to shoot, Yan Baeksun and his friend discussed and mocked him, saying let Zhen have fun, good weapons will not help him as his skills are worthless. A little later, Zhen approached Yan and said that he enjoyed shooting and would take his gun with him to practice. Yan only laughed in response and was hypocritically happy for Zhen. When Zhen and Shi left, Captain Yan's friend grudgingly said that Zhen had taken a lot of ammunition in addition to the shotgun. Yan replied that Zhen was just a lowlife and let him have fun for a couple days with what he took. Zhen and Shi walked along the fields as they approached the exit of the city. Shi warned about it, to which Zhen replied that he knew. Shi stopped Zhen. He emphatically told him that it was too dangerous to go out of town with only one weapon. Zhen replied that Shi didn't need to worry, he wanted to defeat a few zombies to see if he could raise his combat level. Arriving at the right place, Shi said that the huge wall in front of them protects the city from ravenous beasts and zombies, that behind the wall is the real hell. Zhen rapturously looked at the wall and marveled at its height. As they were looking at the wall, a man with a huge machine gun on his shoulders suddenly jumped off the wall. Right in front of them landed Shu Li, a third-level warrior. Disgruntled and annoyed, he asked what the guys were doing here. It didn't take long for Zhen to reply. He told Shu Li that they had come to help him eliminate the zombies. Knowing the guy's fighting level, Shu Li laughed. mussed Zhen's hair and told them to hurry up and get out of here. At this moment, another fighter who was up on the wall turned to Captain Shu Li. He reported that the zombies had broken through the defenses. Zhen immediately turned to the captain. He said that he knew everyone despised him, but he asked for a chance to show off his shooting skills at least once. Captain Shu was not enthusiastic about the idea, but still allowed Zhen to show off his skills. They climbed the wall together and Zhen prepared to shoot. Looking through the rifle's scope, Zhen saw the zombies. He could see their lifestreak and level. He wondered if he could get experience points if he eliminated the enemies. 4 zombies were making their way through the obstacles without stopping. Suddenly a shot rang out. Zhen hit one of them in the shoulder. Zhen wasn't happy with the result. The shoulder shot didn't do much damage. Suddenly Captain Shu shouted that he believed in Zhen and supported him. Zhen exhaled concentrated ly. He raised his weapon again and looked at his opponent, scanning his vulnerabilities. Zhen saw through the scope that the zombies' knees, elbow joints and head were the most vulnerable, so he took aim and fired a shot at the head. A sign appeared in front of him saying that he had gotten 100 experience points. The guy was happy. He was right about getting experience points. The rest of the zombies rushed into battle and all were eliminated by Zheng. He got experience points from each zombie. After that, the guy felt a burst of strength. A sign appeared saying that his level had been raised. Zhen was very happy about his success. Captain Shu told Zhenny that he saw great potential in him, but he still needed to practice a lot more. Zhen thanked him for the compliment. Zhen noticed that after he leveled up, he began to glow with blue flames, and obviously other people can't see it, so his stats became higher. After eliminating the zombies, a few fighters went downstairs to reconnoiter. One of them shouted to the captain that they had found the star crystal. When everyone else went downstairs, Zhen asked if he could get the crystal out of the zombie's body. Captain Shu replied that not every monster has a crystal and that Zhen was very lucky. Shu said that crystals are divided by color. If you take only white crystals, they can be divided into lower, middle and higher grade. Crystals are a currency among warriors. They are much more valuable than ordinary money. For example, a white crystal of the lowest grade can provide food for a week. After listening to Captain Shu, Zhen gave him the crystal and told him to exchange it for something necessary for the warriors on the wall. After saying goodbye to everyone, Shi and Zhen walked away. The warriors told the captain that they did not expect that Zhen Zhou, whom everyone disliked and laughed at, actually turned out to be a good guy. After half a month, Zhen continued training and eliminating the zombies on the wall. He increased his level and characteristics. The captain asked Zhen, after half a month of training, he decided to quit improving his skills. The guy replied that no matter how high his combat skills were, everyone was still afraid of bullets. Shu disagreed with the guy's words, saying that they were only low-level warriors and there were rumors that 6th-level warriors were not even afraid of bullets. Hearing these words, Zhen said that it was something to think about. Shu replied that he should not take this information too seriously. Suddenly there was the sound of gunshots and the roar of the engine. A car was moving towards the wall at breakneck speed. In the back, 2 people were fighting off zombies. Seeing this, Zhen nervously asked Captain Shu if this was the car his father had left on patrol in the morning. One of the fighters looked through binoculars and confirmed that it was the patrol car of the ringleader and they were being chased by zombies. Without wasting time, Zhen took the gun in his hands and took aim. He said to leave it on him and he would help him get rid of the zombies. A shot rang out. The zombie that almost caught up to the patrol car was eliminated. Zhen hit right on target. The patrol car drove outside the wall. The crew was now safe. Everyone got out of the car. The head approached his son and thanked him for his help, saying that his shooting skills had gotten better. Captain Shu wanted to ask the head if they were all right, but the head beat him to it and said that they had encountered some minor problems and that recently the zombies outside had become more active. There was a need to beef up security. Zhen thought that his father wasn't telling the whole truth, since the body wasn't that badly damaged in the morning when he left. The guy also noticed the 2nd stage warrior sitting in the body. Was he really that badly scratched by a regular zombie? It was suspicious. A little later, everyone got into the car and drove to the city. Zhen wanted to talk to his father about what had happened and only he spoke to him as his father interrupted his speech. The head ordered the car to stop. He turned to the wounded warrior that was with him. The leader asked if the warrior knew what happens after a zombie attack. The warrior knew what happens after. His body was already infected. He was holding on to his wounded arm, crying. He wanted to appeal to the leader to spare him. Without letting him speak, the head took his weapon and after apologizing to him, he shot the infected warrior in the head. At that moment, the thought of how low the price of human life is in this world flashed through Zhenya's mind. Upon reaching home, Zhen, the head and Su gathered for dinner in the dining room, all proceeding to eat. Su noticed Zhen's depressed mood and asked why he wasn't eating. He replied that he was just not hungry. After hearing Zhen's answer, the head said that he should get used to the events that happened today, otherwise he would not be able to inherit his position in the future. Zhen was indignant and furious. Pounding on the table, he asked his father if that man was not his friend. His father coldly told him that in order for as many people as possible to survive, sometimes someone or something had to be sacrificed. The head decided to finish his dinner and leave them, saying that from tomorrow Zhenyu was forbidden to leave the house and that Su's housekeeper should keep an eye on him. The next day, when Su went to the boy's room, she didn't find him, only a note saying not to say anything to anyone and the tied sheets that had been pulled down from the window where Zhen had climbed down. Zhen called Lan Shi with him and they headed into the forest. On the way there, Shi kept repeating that he agreed to violate the order of the head and run away with him, but not to go into the forest. It is too dangerous, and suggested that he go hunting zombies. Zhen said that he was no longer interested in zombies, that he was getting very few experience points from them, and he needed to level up as quickly as possible. Shi once again warned him that the level of monsters in the forest was much higher. Lan Shi couldn't stand such stubbornness and blocked Zhen's way. He said it was his duty to protect him. You can't take it and get into trouble. Zhen asked him if he should live under his protection forever and be a second-rate city loser. Suddenly, Zhen abruptly raised his weapon and pointed it directly at Lan Shi. Shi in turn wasn't scared and didn't even budge, continuing to block the guy's path. With confidence in his voice, Zhen said that he was able to defend himself and a shot rang out. The bullet flashed right next to Lan Zi's head and hit the body of the snake that was about to attack him. Shi turned back sharply to see what Zhen had shot. It turned out to be a gray shadow snake that was very poisonous. Zhen decided to see if there was a crystal in the snake, but it wasn't there. Shi looked at the guy in surprise. He couldn't understand how Zhen discovered the snake if he is not a warrior. Zhen was glad that they went to the forest after all. Lan Shi was not happy about it, because this forest is inhabited by monsters that are not even fit for a third-rank warrior. Zhen contradicted him and said that it was just a paradise for him and confidently headed deep into the forest for more hunting. After hunting in the forest, Zhen and Lan Shi headed to the wall. A warrior on duty greeted them, saying that Mr. Zhen had come early today. As they climbed the stairs, Zhen smiled and said that they were not early, as it was almost dark. Climbing the wall, Zhen asked the warrior not to call him master, but to address him as Brother Zhou, so as not to feel awkward. The warrior agreed and called him brother. Afterward, Zhen threw a white crystal into the warrior's hands. The guy caught it and was very surprised that he had a crystal in his hands. Walking further up the wall, Zhen said that he didn't need the crystal and that the warrior should take it back and spend it on his sister's treatment. The warrior was touched by Zhen's care and help that he even cried and thanked the son of the head for the gift. While the boys were walking along the wall, Lan Shi asked Zhen if he was going to give all the catch he had made today. Zhen replied that he would. Lan Shi continued the conversation, saying that these half a month most of the captured snakes were given away and Zhen could make a lot of money by selling them. When the boys reached the city streets and houses, small children ran out to meet them, greeting them. A little girl ran up to Zhen and hugged his leg, laughing and shouting that today she was the first to get to her brother Zhou. Zhen laughed and told the little girl to take her time so she wouldn't fall. The little girl asked him if he had brought snake meat today as well. While Zhen was chatting with the children, Lan Shi put all the snake meat on the counter. The residents came to get their share of the catch. One auntie spoke to Zhen. She said that harvesting shadow snakes was very dangerous and he was taking a big risk helping them. The boy told her not to worry, these snakes don't scare him at all. All the villagers were grateful to Zhenyu. They admired him, said that he was a real master and a natural sniper, looking at how he deftly dealt with snakes. Once again gathered around the dining table with his father and housekeeper Su Junwen, Zhenyu began his meal. While cooling his soup, his father spoke to Zhen. He said he had forbidden him to leave the house, but over the past half-month his son had only made things worse. Mistress Su turned to the head and said it was her fault for not keeping an eye on his son. Zhenya's father replied that it was not her fault. After finishing the meal, the head asked his son if the rapidly spreading rumors about his skillful shooting were true. Zhen replied that when all doors are closed in front of a man, there is always a window and he really has success in shooting. His father listened to him and leaving the dining room advised his son not to get too close to the lower class of people. The boy was surprised at his father's words and stopped eating and asked why his father had told him not to get too close to them. The father turned around and seriously replied to his son that these people might one day become his burden. Zhen was upset at what he heard and became gloomy. He wondered why his father said that and whether his words were true. There were 3 young boys walking along the street. All around them were discussing an interesting topic, talking about who was more accurate in shooting, Captain Yan or the son of the head of Zhou. Everyone agreed that it was Zhou. One of those guys was Captain Yan. He was outraged that he was being compared to that loser Zhen and was ready to prove to everyone that he was the best. Captain Yan's friend stared forward and was surprised to say Mr. Zhou Zhen's name. Captain Yan was angry that his friend was talking about Mr. Zhen and shouted at him not to dare to say that name, but the guy replied that he really saw him. At the same moment, Mr. Zhou together with Lan Shi appeared in front of Captain Yan. The head son smiled and greeted the captain. Captain Yan was not happy about the meeting, but squeezing out a smile on his face, pretended to be surprised by this meeting and greeted Mr. Zhou in return. Zhen pretended to ignore Yan's words and stretched and told Lan Shi that today was a great weather for hunting. This act hurt the captain. He got angry and shouted to Zhen Yu that he was actually talking to him. The leader's son pretended to be surprised and didn't notice that Yan was talking to him. Yan decided to put down this prank by Zhen Yu and continued talking to him saying that he had heard about his success in shooting. Mr. Zhou replied that everyone was exaggerating and spreading rumors since he was the son of the head. Yan decided to put this insolent fellow in his place. The captain offered Zhen Yu to compete with him in marksmanship. Mr. Zhou turned away from him, going about his business and replied to the captain that he didn't have time for that. Captain Yan was surprised that Zhen didn't fall for his ruse. But still, Captain Yan was able to interest Zhen. He offered him a valuable green crystal as a victory, adding that the son of the head could not be frightened by the challenge. An interested Zhen asked Yan what the competition was all about. The captain suggested the option of shooting at a moving target. The head's son looked at Yan closely and said that it was a boring option. The captain asked him what he would suggest instead. Mr. Zhou suggested we go hunting outside the city and the winner would be the one who brought the most valuable prey in a day. Captain Yan was surprised by this proposal, because outside the city was dangerous, but he agreed, saying that the beginning of the hunt in a week and advised to prepare Mr. Zhou. After that, Mr. Zhou and Lan Shi arrived at the hunting site. Sitting in ambush, Shi told Zhen Yu that Captain Yan is a duplicitous and deceitful man, he should not be trusted. Zhen replied that he knew this, for he had seen many such people. Lan Shi was surprised by Mr. Zheng's answer. He asked why agree to this proposal if Captain Yan's actions could be unpredictable. Mr. Zhou smiled and replied that people need to be aware of the volatility of this world, and especially a rascal like Yan Baixin. Immediately after saying that, the guy took his sword, jumped down from the tree branch he was sitting on and neutralized the giant insects that surrounded him. The city chief received information that his son had agreed to participate in the hunting competition with Captain Yan. Upon hearing this, Zhou replied that there was no need to worry about it. After thinking about it for a while, Zhenya's father still said that they should prepare for the event in advance. The day of the competition was approaching. A man with gray hair sat on the roof of a building and watched the people walking along the street. Exhaling cigarette smoke, he said that it was so nice to watch such rare events happening in this city and the fun that would soon begin. Mr. Zhen and Lan Shi walked along the streets of the city and greeted the people passing by. People cheered for Mr. Zhou, telling him to try his best in tomorrow's competition and that they believed in him. Lan Shi told Mr. Zhou that over the past few months, he had managed to change people's opinion of him for the better and become popular. The city leader's son smiled and agreed with his words. At the same time, the car of the city leader Zhou was standing on the streets of the city. He and another warrior were watching. The subordinate of the leader said that if he was very worried about his son, he could cancel the competition. Zhou refused his offer. Exhaling cigarette smoke, with full confidence in his gaze, the Zhou leader said that he believed in his son. Zhen knew what he was doing. At this time, Zhen together with Lan Shi approached the gun shop. Before going inside, Zhen said he hoped he could find the weapons he needed here. When the boys entered, the male armorer said hello and asked what they needed. Zhou Zhen asked if he had a powerful bow to shoot. After thinking for a moment, the man replied to Mr. Zhen Yu that he had one powerful bow in stock. The gunsmith opened a huge chest and started looking for the weapon. He said that the only problem was that this bow couldn't be drawn without a strength characteristic of 300 units. The man took out the bow from the chest and showed it to Mr. Zhou. He said that not many people were using this kind of model now, but if the bow for shooting liked it, it would be a gift for the son of the Zhou leader. Zhen gladly accepted the gift and began to examine it. Lan Shi asked him if it would be better to get a crossbow if he wanted a weapon with a bowstring so badly. Going outside, Zhou Zhen decided to try out the new weapon and drew the bowstring. He replied to Lan Shi that he thought the bow looked much prettier than the crossbow. Zhen skillfully released the tensioned bowstring. He thought that the bow was just perfect for practicing hand strength and marksmanship. In the distance, the boys heard a little boy telling his grandmother that she had gotten something over her head. The grandmother asked in surprise what it could be. Zhen was pleased with his result and said that this was what he wanted. Lan Shi was surprised that the head's son would actually shoot and suggested that he practice outside the city to avoid an unforeseen dangerous situation. The boys moved closer to the grandmother and the boy and Zhou apologized for scaring them. The old lady replied that it was no big deal, but the little boy kept running around the grandmother, trying to get the arrow. When the little boy got the arrow out of his grandmother's hair, he started running around frantically shouting that his grandmother had arrows growing out of her head. At this point he was stopped and lifted up by a male armorer. Taking the arrow from his hands, he told the boy not to run around with this dangerous object in his hands. Holding the arrow in his hands, the armorer took a closer look at the tip and couldn't believe his eyes. The man was amazed at what he saw, for there was a fly on the arrowhead. Zhen was able to catch the tiny fly with the arrow from such a distance. A little later the young men went hunting for giant insects. Zhen shot one after another. Lan Shi was surprised at the boy's results. Zhen decided to take a break and look at his characterization chart. He had already reached level 15 and could unlock 2 additional skills. Zhen wanted to try out the additional skills of marksmanship and double attack sooner. He asked Lan Shi where else he could find monsters scarier and stronger than these insects. Since Lan Shi hadn't seen the characterization table, he asked Zhen what he had in mind to do. When Zhen knew the answer, he rushed to the bamboo forest that Shi had told him about. Lan Shi tried to catch up with him and stop him, as this forest was inhabited by second-level boars that even 4th and 5th ranked warriors did not mess with. Not having time to go deep into the forest, guys saw a huge ferocious boar. He was rushing straight at Mr. Zhou. Zhen jumped up with extraordinary speed and the creepy boar completely missed him, running past him. Lan Shi ran out ahead of Zhen, shouting at him to get away. Mr. Zhou didn't listen and ordered Lan Shi to get out of his way and move aside. Lan Shi had no sooner taken a step than Zhen slipped past him and lunged forward to strike the boar. The guy decided to use his new skill of double attack, stabbing the sinister opponent in the back. In the next moment, the lad stood around the downed boar, surrounded by a swirl of dust raised by its fall. Looking at his prey, Zhou Zhen rejoiced at his success, saying that his new skills were very useful to him. Lan Shi was shocked. He couldn't believe that Zhen had defeated him in a matter of seconds and wondered why he wasn't a warrior. At this point, the son of the leader said that Shi will have to carry the spoils, which did not please his friend. The Zhou family once again gathered at the dinner table. The main dish today was the booty that Zheng had gotten. Mr. Zhou was shocked by the meal. He told his son that he did not know whether to praise him or punish him for his victories over the snakes and wild boar, because it was very dangerous. Without distracting himself from eating, Zhen asked his father if he could lend him some star crystals or gold to bet on himself in tomorrow's competition. Leader Zhou was surprised by his son's request. Meanwhile, the training base was not empty. Two guys standing at the gate were watching Captain Yan and talking about how he had been practicing like crazy lately, taking his bed too seriously. After taking a short break, Yan couldn't stop thinking that he would definitely win and prove to everyone that Zhou Zhen was not a genius, but a simple loser. The day of the competition came. People gathered in the square to watch and support their champions. In the center stood two cars meant for the contestants. The competitors had arrived. Zhen Zhou and Captain Yan were on full alert. Each had brought the weapons they needed for the hunt. On one side of the street stood Captain Yan's fans. People were shouting and cheering for the guy, saying that he was the best and they believed in his victory. On the other side were the residents who supported Zhou Zhen. Many of them were the ones the guy had helped and shared the spoils with them. They were confident of brother Zhen's victory. Zhen greeted the residents and thanked them for believing in his victory. The captain with a sly grin told him that he appeared to have many people supporting him. Zhen stroked the boy who approached him on the head and asked if he had bet on him. The boy replied that he hadn't, as there was no money. Zhen took a white crystal out of his pocket and gave it to the boy, telling him to bet on it. The boy accepted the crystal and said he would do it. Captain Yan didn't expect such support from the boy. He envied it and told his head son not to force the child to get involved in such a thing. Zhen calmly replied to Yan that it was just a bet and it wouldn't hurt the boy in any way. The captain replied that Zhen was being overconfident. Mr. Zhou wanted to shake hands with the captain and wished him good luck, but Yan turned away and said that he was the one who could use more luck. Both contestants took a seat in their cars. Each of them was very serious about winning. The judge made a speech that the participants agreed to use weapons of any level and the winner will be determined only by the value of the prey. After that the hunt began. The engine of the cars roared and the two cars drove in different directions, each participant to their own territory to hunt. Captain Yan was serious. With a wicked smile he said that Zhou Zhen would be finished. The judge with a serious face looked at the competitors who had started and thought that it would be a lesson for the rookie Zhen to compete against a third-ranked fighter, if he could even come back alive. After the competition started, Leader Zhou stood on the wall and escorted Zhen who had gone hunting with his gaze. His subordinate asked that there might be a need to send someone to protect his son. The man said that there was no need, he should handle it himself, as his son would have to rely on himself in the future. Not long before the competition one person received a special order. This person could only be contacted through a secret channel via walkie-talkie. The main purpose of the assignment was to eliminate one of the contestants, namely Zhou Zhen. The reward was a green crystal. A man with a gray beard accepted the order, but said that the fulfillment of the order would depend on the level of the green crystal. This man was Tang Lai, a 5th-ranked warrior. After taking the order, he sat on the bed and juggled his knife, talking about how he needed to relax before he could start working. A girl with long brown hair was in a hurry to get down the stairs. She was running to break the news. Once down the stairs, the girl went to the door and gave the message. She turned to her master, saying that the competition had already started. The man behind the door heard the message. He sat and reasoned that the green crystal for the son of the head was too high a price and that it was the last time he would agree to such a thing. But as soon as the plan was accomplished, he would receive many times more. Arriving at the forest, Zhen looked at the map of the area. It was very detailed. This map was given to him by his housekeeper Su Junwen. The map showed the locations of the monster animals. One of them was the location of the very dangerous 3rd-level shadow wolves. After scouting the location of the wolves, Mr. Zhen got out of the car and confidently went to hunt for them. When he reached the designated spot, he saw a huge shadow wolf in front of him, devouring its prey. The boy prepared for battle. In the end, Zhen managed to defeat 5 huge monsters, all of them defeated lying around him. Mr. Zhou was breathing heavily after the dangerous battle. He thought that 5 at a time was his limit. Zhen looked at his spreadsheet. He was already level 16. He assumed that his abilities must have been a little worse than a rank 3 warrior. Suddenly the guy was pierced by a sharp pain in his chest. He must have been injured during the fight with the monsters after all. Zhen took out a flask of red liquid. He wasn't sure if the medicine he had gotten would help him or not. The flask contained a healing potion that could restore health for 6 seconds. Opening the flask he heard a not-so-pleasant smell that reminded him a bit of disinfectant. Zhen poured some of the contents from the flask on the deep wound left by the sharp claws of the beast. To the guy's surprise, the wound didn't heal. He thought that maybe he should drink this healing potion. Zhen gingerly looked at the medicine. He wasn't sure about drinking it, but thinking that he was in game mode, then nothing bad should happen. When the head son made up his mind, he knocked over the vial of healing potion and drank every last drop of it. At the same moment, the guy's deep wound began to heal and he felt a surge of strength and energy. Zhen was surprised. He did not think that this potion would help him so quickly and would have an incredible effect. Meanwhile, 3 warriors were sitting at the edge of the forest discussing today's competition. One guy asked the other if he had bet on anyone. The warrior replied that he hadn't. He had worked too hard to waste his money so stupidly. The girl sitting with them, a third-rank warrior, stood up abruptly and told them to be quiet. She heard someone approaching them. From deep within the forest, a man with gray hair walked towards them. It was Tang Lai, the 5th-ranked warrior who was supposed to eliminate Zhenya. He was surprised to see more people in this forest. The warrior girl was the first to step towards him and ordered him to stop. The man stopped and asked her not to worry about his appearance as he was just lost. Tang Lai then took out a picture of Zhou Zhen and showed it to the warriors, asking if they had seen the man by any chance. One of the warriors recognized Zheny and said he had seen him this morning. His friend shouted and told him to shut up and not to tell such information to strangers. Tang Lai was happy with this answer and instantly attacked the nearest warrior, a girl, saying that he had gotten to the right people. The girl fell to the ground at the same second, giving no sign of life. One of the guys ordered the other to run away and rushed to attack the enemy. As he got close to the man, he was struck by Tang Lai's blow and suffered the same fate as the girl warrior. The remaining warrior did not have time to run away and screamed. He asked the man why he was doing this. Tang Lai replied that he did not like to leave any traces or witnesses in his path and eliminated the guy. After the battle, Zhen moved to another location and decided to rest for a while and climbed a tree. A pack of shadow wolves had gathered below. Among the beasts having black fur like tar, a huge proud white wolf sat majestically on a dais. Zhen rejoiced and realized that it was the leader of the pack, the most powerful and strongest shadow wolf. The guy took out his equipment. He saw that it was broken and realized that in that case he wouldn't be able to deal with the pack leader. Then the boy looked at his watch. It was already the first hour of the day. He thought that if he didn't find valuable prey, he would really be considered a loser. Then Zhen heard a noise behind him. He turned around and saw a stranger approaching him. The man came closer and closer. Mr. Zhou saw a red streak above him. He assumed that the stranger was coming to eliminate him. When the man approached, he was surprised. He thought his target was in that tree, but the guy was not there. Zhen noticed the enemy, beforehand hid behind another tree. He realized that his opponent is very strong and that they came for him, as someone wants to eliminate him. Taking out his weapon, the guy gathered his thoughts. He thought that the one who attacks first wins. The next moment Zhen went on the attack with lightning speed and faced his opponent Tang Lai. The man was shocked by this turn of events. He didn't expect to be attacked by the man he had come to hunt. Zhou rushed to attack and strike his opponent. The man only had time to block him. Tang Lai didn't expect such speed and number of blows thrown at him by the son of Zhou's leader. Zhen decided to win by using the effect of surprise and his speed. During the battle, the guy realized that he would not last that long and it was time for his trump card, the double attack. Gathering all his strength, the son of the head delivered his crowning blow to his opponent. Tang Lai was clearly not expecting such a powerful attack. The man flew off and hit a tree, blood spurting from his shoulder. The killer was shocked that Zhou was able to break through his block. The guy was as surprised as his opponent. From his powerful attack, the man was only lightly wounded. Tang Lai was alarmed, angry. The people from the intelligence department had assured him that the guy was weak. Were they talking about him accurately? Lowering his weapon, Zhen decided to ask the mercenary if Captain Yang Baeksun had sent him. Gathering to attack, the man said that the guy was much stronger than he expected, but for someone who would soon be gone, there was no need to know that information. Just then, Tang Lai threw a powerful punch. Zhen barely managed to dodge the mercenary's attack and bounced back, realizing that he could not win this fight. The son of the head decided to lie low to catch his breath. The man looked around trying to find the guy. He told Zheny that it was good to hide, but there was no way to escape. The guy quickly looked out from behind the tree to find out all of his opponent's vulnerabilities to strike as effectively as possible. Tang Lai's vulnerable spots turned out to be his head, heart, hands and knees. Attacking these spots would do the most damage. Zhen didn't drag out the moment and immediately fired a bullet at the man's head, but missed. Tang Lai had time to react and ducked. The man immediately struck back with his sword that the dust clubs rose up, but Zhen quickly dodged it. Tang Lai told the guy that he had no idea how high the fitness level of a rank 6 martial artist. The man was able to dodge his bullet with his eyes closed. The guy once again hid in the shadows of the branches as he continued to watch his opponent. He decided to resort to his last option. Zhen jumped down from the tree branch and started shooting non-stop towards the assassin, trying to confuse him. Tang Lai skillfully dodged each bullet as if it was no big deal to him. The man asked the guy if he would admit defeat. Ceasing fire, Zhen rushed to run through the forest bowl with all his might. The mercenary chased him and shouted that there was no escape. Running out of the forest and on the edge of the cliff, Zhen pushed off the edge of the cliff at full speed and flew down. Tang Lai followed, swinging his sword for the final blow and mentally bidding farewell to his victim. Zhen landed right into the beast's den as he planned. It was his last hope. He began attacking the beasts, trying to provoke their aggression. When Tang Lai landed following Zhen, he told the guy that he was crazy. At this rate, the two of them wouldn't be able to get out of here. Suddenly one of the shadow wolves sank its teeth into the man's leg. That's when Tang Lai heard Zheng's words. He said he would see which one of them couldn't get out of this trap. The man sharply pushed away and hit the wolf in the face with all his might. The beast squealed loudly in pain. At the same moment, the leader of the pack, a huge white wolf that was sleeping in the forest, woke up when he heard the call of his kin. This monster was on the battlefield in a flash, baring his teeth and warning his enemies with his snarl that there would be no mercy for them. The wolf howled at the top of his voice, rallying his pack to defeat his abusers. With eyes glowing with anger and bloodlust, the huge beast headed toward the men. The white wolf drew closer and closer to his opponents, his pack parting in front of him. Zhen looked around trying to assess the situation. He thought there was still a chance to break through. Tang Lai told the guy that he had cut off his own escape route, but he himself would be able to get out without difficulty. Taking 2 grenades in his hands, Zhen laughed with the man and said that now he would make it difficult for him. Immediately after saying that, the guy detonated the grenades. Flames and smoke enveloped the whole place. Covering his face, Tai Lai, gasping from the smoke, shouted the guy's name. He was angry and wanted to take revenge on him. When the smoke cleared, the man wanted to attack Zheni, but he was no longer there. The guy still managed to escape. Before Tang Lai knew it, he was attacked by the pack leader, a huge white paw flying towards him. At this time, Zhen was sitting high up in a tree watching. The wolves were surrounding Tang Lai. After drinking his medicinal potion, the guy laughed off his killer and wished him a good time. Tang Lai continued to fight and swing his sword trying to defeat the wolves, but he was powerless against so many opponents. Zhen, continuing to sit on the tree, uttered the words that it had become quiet already. This man was probably already gone. In front of the guy's eyes was a terrible picture. The entire pack of shadow wolves was defeated and covered the ground with their bodies. On top of everyone was the leader of the pack and Tang Lai. There was scarlet blood congealed on the killer's face, and his eyes were empty and lifeless. The same lifeless eyes were also those of the white wolf, and his teeth were in the flesh of a man. Zhen stood and looked at the frozen picture of the fall of the 2 strongest opponents. He was surprised how one man could defeat the whole pack of these monsters. Apparently such are the skills of a warrior of the 5th rank, he thought. Having freed the killer's body from the fangs of the beast, Zhen put him down and said that he was not to be trifled with, but Tang Lai did not hear his words. The guy decided that it was necessary to search the man's body. Maybe he would find something useful for himself. From his pocket he took out a small pouch. Zhen opened the bag and found a lot of colorful crystals. There were white, blue and even green crystals. The guy thought that Tang Lai was a rich man. Suddenly the guy heard a growl. He turned around and saw that a white wolf made that sound. It was ready to leave this world but was still breathing. Zhen took out his knife and approached the wolf. He said he would help him and put an end to his suffering. Evening was almost upon us. A large number of people had gathered in the town square. Everyone was waiting for the contestants. Two guys were talking to each other. One kept asking why the contestants weren't coming back. The other was wondering who his friend had bet on. The guy replied that his bet was on Commander Yan, and the other guy also bet on him, saying that although the winnings would not be big, they were guaranteed. Many people flattered Mr. Yan that his son had a 90% chance of winning and congratulated him. He smiled slyly and said that there was no need to hurry because the boys had not returned yet. At the same time, Zheng was also waiting in the square. Housekeeper Su was talking to Lan Shi. She was worried that something bad might have happened. The guy replied that Zhen will definitely be able to handle it. The leader stood silently waiting for his son's arrival. The first to arrive was Captain Yan. He got out of the car and waved to the residents. The people greeted him joyfully, congratulating him on his victory. Mr. Yan approached his son and asked if he was injured. The son replied that it was not important, the main thing was to defeat that loser Zhen. Mr. Yan called his worker and told her to take his son to rest after such a hard day. Mr. Yan then looked towards the leader of Zhou, smirked and said that the results would be announced when Zhen returned. Suddenly, the people of the city squealed with joy. They saw Mr. Zhen returning from the competition. At full speed, Zhen's car burst into the town square, driving through the crowds of people. Stopping beside the opponent's car, Zhen got out. Captain Yan also stood beside his car. Everyone prepared for the announcement of the results. Captain Yan spoke to Zhen, saying that he came back quickly, not having time to let him rest. Zhou replied that there would still be plenty of time to rest. Confident of his victory, Captain Yan suggested not to count the spoils of both participants at the same time, but to count them one by one. He wanted to show everyone his superiority over Zhen. Chief Zhen heard these words and realized that Captain Yan wanted to embarrass his son in front of all the people in the city. Zhou Zhen was not afraid. He smiled and said that he did not care, and if Captain Yan wanted to count in this way, there was no problem. Yan replied that then they would count his catch first and then Zhen's catch. In this way, the captain wanted to humiliate Zhou Zhen. One of the judges took a microphone and addressed the villagers. He said that they would first estimate the value of Captain Yan's game. After he said this, the tarpaulin was removed from the captain's car to estimate the quantity and value of the catch. The people were very shocked at what they saw. They were amazed at Captain Yan's catch. The captain put his hand on Zhen's shoulder and boastfully asked him who he thought would win in this competition. While the catch was being evaluated, people gathered around the captain's car, all looking at the huge wild boar. People were discussing the captain's catch. They could not believe that it was possible to catch such a monster alone. The judges looked at the catch and began to calculate the value of the second-level sword boar. At this point, Captain Yan said that it was necessary to see if there were any star crystals inside the catch, as it was almost a third-level game, and then calculate the final value. Zhou Zhen didn't mind. He asked for a quicker calculation as he wanted to go home and take a bath sooner. Inside the loot was a medium white crystal. In the end, Captain Yan's entire loot was comparable to a top-grade white star crystal. Zhen told the captain that it wasn't a bad catch and fortune was on his side. The captain replied that only weaklings believe in fortune. Yan said that even without fortune he would win and that he could even share half the value of the crystal with him. Zhen laughed with the capital in return and thanked him for being so generous. The captain became furious, for in his opinion Zhen had only achieved something because of his father's position. Then Captain Yan turned to the men. He said that the sword boar was not the whole catch and they had not yet seen the main catch. Going to the back of the car, the worker found another game. It was a level 3 forest spider. The people were alarmed and surprised. They asked if the spider had been neutralized, because it was a very dangerous monster. Mr. Yan was proud of his son. He said that even 4th-rank warriors dare not approach the forest spider. The captain's friend decided to flatter and replied that Captain Yan was very much like his father. After appraising the spider, the counting was completed and announced the value of 3 top-grade white crystals. People cheered and rejoiced for Captain Yan. They were confident that he would emerge victorious. Enjoying the praise, Captain Yan looked back towards Zhenya and told him that there was a huge gap between them and such a scum couldn't compare to a genius. After listening to the captain, Zhou Zhen asked if Yan considered himself a scum in this situation. Captain Yan didn't expect such an impertinent answer. He abruptly turned towards Zhen to scowl at him. Zhen didn't react to the captain. He calmly stood leaning on the car and said that it was the scum that could only talk. Finally Zhen said it was time to look at his catch and tore the tarp from the back of his car. Everyone saw Zhen's catch and was shocked. Zhen decided to brag and said that since time was short, he hadn't caught anything particularly valuable. There was a huge white monster lying on Zhou Zhen's car. The guy proudly presented his catch to everyone. Captain Yan was horrified. He couldn't believe his eyes that Zheng's catch was a very strong monster, a shadow wolf. Head Zhou and housekeeper Su were shocked that Zhen had defeated the shadow wolf king, a 4th-level beast. After inspecting the loot, the judges announced that the value of Mr. Zhen's catch was 1 lower-grade blue crystal. People were just shocked. They said that 1 such crystal was equal to 100 top-grade white crystals. People then started to congratulate Zhou Zhen for winning the competition. They shouted his name and cheered for him. Captain Yan was angry. He started shouting that Zhen had cheated to win. After all, even 5th-rank warriors wouldn't dare to challenge a shadow wolf king. In response, Zhen said that he should thank Captain Yan. After all, it was only because of him that he was able to defeat this wolf. Yan was surprised that Zhen said such words. The son of the head continued talking. He said that in order to deal with a scum like him, Captain Yan had called a 5th-rank warrior to eliminate him. Yan became nervous. He replied that it was obvious that Zhen had cheated and now wanted to frame him. At this point Mr. Yan intervened and silenced the commander. He praised Zhen for his success and said he would teach his son a lesson for not admitting defeat. Zhen looked at Director Yan and thought that this fat man with squinting cunning eyes was hardly a good person. At this moment, the Zhou leader came over and said that he shouldn't take the situation so seriously. After all, it was just a dispute between 2 boys. The leader said that his son was just lucky and he was no match for Captain Yan. Principal Yan laughed and said that luck is also important. After the competition was over, Director Yan was very angry. He pushed his female employee hard and she hit the wall. He asked her questions about why Zhou Zhen was left alive and what happened to the Shadow Wolf King. The man said that that assassin was good for nothing. He no longer had the will to wait and would use his second method. Zhou Zhen and his close people gathered around the table to celebrate his victory. After taking a few sips, Zhen coughed. His drink was not as tasty as he expected. His father patted him on the shoulder and told him that the first time drinking alcohol was always not particularly pleasant. Putting down his glass of alcohol, the guy said he'd rather eat meat. Everyone laughed at him. Eating his piece of meat, Zhen thought that no matter what world he was in, he didn't like alcohol. Raising his glass up, the leader smiled and said that his son had grown so much, and congratulated him on his victory. Zhen looked at his father with tears in his eyes. He was grateful for his support and such warm words. Then Zhen remembered about Yan Baeksun and his father Mr. Yan. He wanted to ask his father about them. But the guy decided to keep silent. He didn't know exactly who was behind the hired assassin and rash remarks could cause a lot of problems. The leader had heard their names and told Zhen to not worry about Yang Baeksun accusing him of cheating, adding that the guy had good skills, but his temper was terrible. Zhen listened to his father, but still decided to look into the matter himself. He sat on his bed and looked at an interesting item he had recently found while searching for his killer. He kept twirling it in his hands. The guy thought that maybe this thing was a bomb. Suddenly, Zhen accidentally dropped the thing and it got damaged. Several parts broke off. Thinking that it might be a bomb, the guy hid behind the bed, but seeing that it wasn't, he thought he had convinced himself that it was. Picking up the thing and examining it, Zhen thought it might be some kind of communication device. Suddenly, Su Junwen's housekeeper came into the guy's room and said that he was sent crystals for his bet in the competition. Su said she had to help Zhen Yu and asked where to put that bag of crystals. The guy was startled by the girl's abrupt appearance, but he said to put the bag. After all, he can handle it himself. Zhen quickly walked over to the girl and tried to pick up the sack. For a moment their hands touched. Taking the heavy sack, the guy said he would carry it himself. Su Junwen started to object to him. After all, she is a housekeeper and it is her duty. Zhen smiled back at her and said that to him she was just an ordinary girl and she shouldn't limit herself to being a housekeeper. Suddenly, the Zhou leader appeared in front of the young people and took them by surprise, asking if Zhen was busy right now. Housekeeper Su was embarrassed and immediately left them. Zhen was embarrassed but replied that he was not busy. His father told him that by winning today, Zhen had instilled confidence and trust in many people, so it was time for him to learn how to handle the administrative affairs of the city. Putting the bag on the floor, the boy said that he didn't want to become the leader of the city, but he had a request for his father. Leader Zhou asked what his request was. Zhen asked him to help him improve his equipment with the crystals he got for the competition. At the same time, a very interesting conversation was going on elsewhere. Yang Baeksun was in a rage. He asked if Zhen had cheated and his suspicions were true. He was told that judging from the Shadow Wolf King's wounds, the beast had been eliminated by someone else. Captain Yan started shouting and indignant. He turned to his father, saying that Zhen should answer for his deception. At this point, Mr. Yan's patience ran out and he thumped the table loudly, saying that he knew what was happening and that his son needed to forget about it. Yang Baisun could not calm down and shouted that his reputation was at stake and that he could not just let it go. His father didn't listen to his whims. He said that he knew the situation without him and sent him away. Captain Yan quickly left his father's office saying that Zhen does not think that he is allowed to do anything because his father is the leader of the city and this is not the end of their feud. Meanwhile, another zombie elimination was taking place on the wall. Zhen continued to work hard and finally reached the 20th level. The guy looked at his new equipment and gear and realized that his upgrade speed had really increased with this. Having reached level 20, Zhen's new skill became a jump attack, which could deal 200 points of damage. Suddenly, an incredibly huge zombie as tall as residential buildings appeared in Zhen's field of vision. Together with the others, the monster went on the attack and growled menacingly, wanting to taste the flesh and blood of people. Having examined the huge monster through binoculars, Zhen was surprised by such a big guy and said that this would be a good test for him. At that moment, a sound signal was turned on one of the buildings, which spread everywhere and affected the zombies. They became more aggressive. The person who turned on the signal contacted someone on the radio and said that the last stage of the mission was regeneration. The huge enraged zombie accelerated and began to run. Zhen at that moment hid on one of the roofs of the buildings to eliminate this monster. Having scanned the zombie's most vulnerable spots, the guy pulled the bowstring and attacked it. The arrow pierced the monster's head, but it was still alive. He took it out of his head and became even more ferocious and aggressive. Zhen was very surprised that the monster was not eliminated. He thought that this zombie was an elite creature, since it was not hit by such a powerful attack. Suddenly the monster turned around and looked towards the guy. He found the man who shot him. The zombie went crazy, roared loudly and began to demolish everything in its path to destroy its offender. Zhen tensed up. He realized that he had pissed off this zombie and now it would not be easy for him. Without thinking twice, the guy decided to attack. There was no time to hesitate, since the zombie had almost reached him. Zhen used his new ability, a jump attack. He jumped on the zombie and hit him with a blow to the back. The monster continued to fight and attack the guy. Zhen skillfully and lightning fast dodged all his attacks and continued to fight. The sounds of their battle spread further and a cloud of dust mixed with the air. At the same time, an unknown warrior was sitting on one of the roofs of the buildings and polishing his blade to a shine. He heard the noise of Zhen's battle and he became interested in what was going on there, and the louder the noise became, the more his interest grew. Finally, Zhen was able to defeat the huge zombie. The monster fell to the ground without signs of life. After that, the guy was able to extract a blue crystal from it. He was very pleased with his catch. Having taken his prey, Zhen left this place and went to the city on his motorcycle. The guy was stopped at the checkpoint and asked who was trying to get into the city. Coming closer to Zhen, the warrior recognized the son of the leader and greeted him. Zhen asked if something had happened, because there was no guard here in the morning. The warrior replied that he did not really know about the situation, but there were rumors that the zombies near the city had suddenly become more active. Zhen thought that something was wrong here. It was not for nothing that it seemed to him that there were especially many zombies today when he was hunting. Without thinking twice, Zhen went straight to his father to find out what was happening from him. Bursting into his father's office, the guy saw that there was a meeting there. Everyone was discussing something very important. Seeing his son, the leader told him that he had arrived on time and to come listen to what they were talking about. Zhen greeted everyone present and the leader Zhou said to continue the discussion. The leader's ward said that they had found a huge zombie in the old part of the city, heading towards their settlement, and according to calculations, it would arrive in their city at noon tomorrow, and it would obviously not be alone. One of the warriors said that they could certainly hold the defense, but it would be better to take the initiative and destroy this monster. Director Yan said that he agreed with these words, because since he was the head of the supply department, he could not allow the harvest, which was supposed to take place soon, to fail, so that people would not starve. The leader asked Captain Shu if news of today's mobilization had leaked out. Shu replied that everything was fine, no one would say anything about it, and the leader should not worry. Afterwards, Leader Zhou told everyone that tomorrow they would gather troops and head outside the city, with Captain Shu and Commander Yan covering the rear. As he was about to leave the meeting, he patted his son on the shoulder and announced that in his absence, all power would be in the hands of his son Zhou Zhen. Everyone present at the meeting reacted differently to this news. Some were happy for Zhen, some were unhappy, and some may have had bad intentions towards him. Zhou Zhen himself was extremely surprised and did not expect that his father would leave him in charge in his absence. A little later, his father called his son for a talk. He said that he would be gone for a while, and Zhen just needed to gain experience in managing the city. The guy seemed not to hear his words, saying that such a zombie horde was very dangerous and he was worried about his father. The leader said that Zhen was a stupid boy, because his father was a 5th-rank warrior and they were just going to distract and lead the zombies away from the city. Leaving his father's office, Zhen said that no matter what, his father must promise that he would return safe and sound. Zhou promised this to his son. Looking at the family photo, the leader turned to his late wife. He said that their son had already grown up and asked her to bless him. A few days had passed since the leader had left for the operation. Zhen and Shu were standing on the wall and patrolling. At that moment a fighter ran up to them and shouted that the patrol had returned. The first to arrive were pretty battered. They reported that trouble had happened to the leader. Zhen and Lan Shi got into the car and went to meet the rest of the warriors from the patrol. Zhen asked Shi if his father really had problems. The guy answered that he did not know, but said that he knew the person who reported about his father. He really was in the patrol. On the way, Zhen looked at the surroundings and wondered why there were no traces of the battle with the zombies anywhere. Then the guy noticed that they had gone the other way and asked the driver where they were going. The driver asked for patience and said that they would be there soon. Zhen discovered that the driver's life bar had turned red, and this could only mean one thing, that this was his enemy and they had fallen into a trap. The car arrived at its destination. The driver turned sharply and parked the car. There were several warriors there. One of the warriors said that they had been waiting for them for too long, and another warrior stood up with his weapon and said that they could get down to business. Obviously they were not in a friendly mood. The driver turned to the guys and said with a grin that this was their stop and they could get out of the car. Enraged, Lan Shi took his weapon in his hands, stood up abruptly and asked what the driver meant. At that moment, a man came out from behind the pile of pipes. He said that the current situation was clear, it was a trap. This man was Yan Baeksun. The guys got out of the car. Lan Shi stood in front of Zhen, guarding him, and asked how Yan Baeksun dared to betray the leader. Captain Yan sharply hit Lan Shi in the stomach and shouted that who allowed him to open his mouth and talk to him. Zhen managed to catch Lan Shi, preventing him from falling. Then he asked Yan if the zombie crowd was a consequence of his actions. Yan Baeksun arrogantly lit his cigarette and said that he did not have to answer him, because they would soon be gone anyway. The captain added that Leader Zhou was a very smart person and they had to work hard to lure him out of the city. Zhen's expression became increasingly tense and angry. He asked Yan what they were planning to do. Yan exhaled cigarette smoke at Zhen and said that Leader Zhou had been in his position for too long and needed to be replaced with someone more worthy. Then Lan Shi turned to Zhen, saying that the weakest warrior present here was a warrior of the 2nd rank. Lan Shi came closer and told Lord Zhou to leave immediately, and he would hold them off. One of the warriors shouted that they were not deaf and could hear their conversation, and none of the guys would be able to escape from here. At this moment, Zhen said that this warrior was right. The guy reached this warrior in lightning speed, inflicted a wound on him and said that all these warriors would really stay here and no one would be able to leave. With incredible speed, Zhen continued to eliminate his opponents. Many of them did not even have time to react to his approach. The warriors tried to catch up with Zhen. They shouted how dare he eliminate their comrades and that they would destroy him. Zhou Zhen ignored all their words and struck one warrior after another, sparing no effort. He was extremely angry. Yan Baixin could not believe his eyes. He did not understand how this insignificant Zhen, who was much weaker than them, could eliminate so many warriors of a higher rank. During the battle, the warriors asked how Zhen, who was only a trainee, could fight like that. The guy answered why they thought that an ordinary trainee could not eliminate anyone and hit another warrior. Suddenly, a shot flew past Zhen's head. The guy managed to notice and quickly dodged the bullet. The frightened Yan Baixin began to shoot at him without stopping. He shouted that Zhen could not be so strong and most likely he drank some kind of elixir. He must be detained because soon the guy will weaken and they will be able to finish him off. All the warriors aimed at Zhen and began to shoot at him. The guy seemed to have gained unearthly speed, dodging all the bullets and approaching his main opponent. Finally, Zhen reached his target and knocked Yan Baixin to the ground with one blow. Yan screamed how this was possible, because he was a warrior of the third rank. Zhen replied that not only the rank is so important and that now the commander is in a terrible situation. Commander Yan shouted that Zhen could not destroy him, because now the entire city was under the control of his father, Director Yan, and if he was eliminated, then Headmaster Zhou would be in trouble too. Zhen replied that it would be seen who would emerge victorious from this fight, and asked where they had taken his father. Facing a frightened look and distracting Zhen, Commander Yan replied that his father was in the eastern part. Zhen had just turned away from the enemy, looking towards the eastern part of the city, when at that time Yan Baixin took out a knife to attack the guy. The commander rushed towards Zhen, but did not even have time to notice how the guy disappeared from sight and attacked him with lightning speed in a jump from behind. Zhou Zhen dealt the decisive blow in this duel, eliminating Yan Baixin. After the battle was over, Lan Shi ran up to Zhen and asked what they would do next. Zhen confidently replied that they had to find and save his father and eliminate all the traitors. Meanwhile, the zombies continued to actively approach the city borders. The patrol was not far from them. The leader was watching the monsters. Leader Zhou noticed something suspicious. He wanted to turn to his comrade Lao Yu to say that the zombies' movements were not natural. Suddenly, from behind the back, Leader Zhou's comrade treacherously attacked him, wounding him with his sharp sword. Then Lao Yu looked at his sword and said that with such a wonderful weapon, the victim does not even have time to understand when he is attacked. Leader Zhou was shocked. He realized that his friend betrayed and attacked him, but apparently Lao Yu did not regret it. The man grinned in response and told Leader Zhou that he was not the only traitor, others also stepped on this path. At this moment, all the warriors who were on patrol and Zhou's close comrades came out from the thick of the forest. Leader Zhou couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't understand how his closest friends could betray him. He asked if these two hypocrites had really arranged all this. After all the warriors, Director Yan was the last one to come out of the forest. He asked how the leader could forget about him. Without waiting for the leader's answer, Director Yan said goodbye to him and attacked him, wanting to wipe the man off the face of the earth. Leader Zhou quickly reacted and began to dodge Director Yan's attacks. At that moment, the rest of the warriors opened fire in his direction, not giving him a chance to escape or dodge the fire. Somehow, the leader managed to block all these attacks, but he missed the moment when Yan approached him from behind. Director Yan managed to tell the leader that he couldn't hide from them and wounded him in the shoulder. After that attack, Leader Zhen stood by the tree and asked why they betrayed him, because he trusted them so much. Director Yan told him that in this world, trust is worthless and people without power will be losers all their lives. Leader Zhen listened to his words and laughed, then he asked them if they really thought he would die so easily. In a split second, Leader Zhen approached Director Yan, preparing to attack him and told them to try to destroy him again. Yan managed to block the leader's sword. He screamed and began to call for help from Captain Lao Yu and Mr. He. It was obvious that Leader Zhou was furious and was not going to give up so easily. He was ready to fight the traitors until his last breath. At the same time, a car with Zhen and Lan Shi was rushing at full speed. They were rushing to help Leader Zhou. Zhen thought that even if this was his insignificant father, with whom they were not particularly close, he must save him. Suddenly Lan Shi stopped the car and said that they had apparently arrived at the defensive headquarters. Behind the fence, Zhen could see the empty life bars of the warriors. He realized that his father's entire patrol had been eliminated and that there were traitors in front of him. A warrior approached the car. He recognized Mr. Zhou and said that his father was currently trying to drive away the zombies and he could take him to him. Zhen stood up and said that there was no need to bother so much and that he himself would first take the warrior to another place, and that place would be hell, because only there was a road for traitors, after which he quickly eliminated his opponent. At the same time, the leader's traitors surrounded him. They attacked in three at once so that Zhou would not have a chance to escape. With a smile on his face, the leader Zhou said that if he died, he would take all three with him. Captain Lao Yu told the leader that he was almost exhausted, but still continued to be stubborn. Already wounded and having lost his arm, Director Yan shouted that it was time to end all this and attacked Director Zhen again. The leader was able to repel the attack, but part of his equipment was damaged. He could no longer block the attacks of the opponents. Director Yan and Captain Yu realized that this was their chance and immediately attacked the leader together. The men wounded the leader, but he had another trump card, a hidden dagger in his sleeve, with which he managed to wound Director Yan. Yan jumped back and screamed in pain, after which the leader managed to throw back his second opponent Yu. Director Yan told Captain Lao Yu that if he hoped for his death, then he guessed wrong, because in this case all the grain storages would be burned and he would not receive anything. The captain laughed and told the director to try not to die then, and then went to attack the leader. Lao Yu raised his sword over his head and told Zhou that his time had finally run out. The exhausted leader was ready to accept his fate. Suddenly, as the sword approached the leader, an arrow flew out and knocked the sword down, repelling the traitor's attack. Director Yan, Lao Yu and Mr. He were horrified. They immediately understood whose well-aimed arrow had repelled this blow. Zhou Zhen stood on the concrete ruins and looked at his opponents. He asked them whose time had run out. Lao Yu froze in horror. He could not understand how such a loser as Zhou Zhen could repel his sword. Leader Zhou laughed and said that the only worthless people he had seen here were his old comrades who had betrayed him, not his son. Then the leader asked his son to help him catch these traitors and finally deal with them. Zhen told his father not to worry and threw him a flask with a healing potion that restores strength and heals wounds. The leader drank the potion and Zhen spoke to Director Yan. He told him that he had just played with his son, now it was his turn. Director Yan asked what Zhen had done to his son. The guy told him that he and his son had done terrible things here and the director still had the nerve to ask such questions. Mr. Yan was furious at these words and began to attack Zhen. Zhen skillfully dodged the man's long-range attacks, saying that Director Yan was a real weakling. Reaching Yan, Zhen pounced on him and used his double attack ability. Director Yan called Mr. He and ordered him to help eliminate this guy. Mr. He immediately rushed to attack Zhen, swinging his sword. The guy managed to dodge and stabbed his opponent in the back. He continued to nervously and frantically swing his sword, but Zhen had disappeared without a trace. He looked around and did not see the guy anywhere. Suddenly, the guy seemed to fall from the sky and attacked Mr. He from the air, while saying goodbye to the traitor. At this moment, the city was being evacuated. A resident asked a warrior what happened outside the city, that they were being sent to a safe zone. The warrior replied that a large wave of zombies was approaching and it would be better if everyone stayed safe for 2 days. Captain Shu escorted the residents to a safe place. He told everyone to hurry, because the leader was sacrificing his life outside, so they should help protect their homeland. For a second, Shu was distracted and thought about the leader of Zhou. He did not lose hope that everything was okay with him. At the same time, the housekeeper Su Junwen was at home, anxiously looking out the window, waiting for any news, with the helicopter key in her hand. Su remembered the conversation with the leader Zhou. Then the leader told her that she had taken care of Zhen for many years, like a younger brother, and he had long considered her his own daughter. The leader also said that if the city could not withstand the zombie attack this time, he would leave the care of his son to her and handed her the helicopter key. Zhou asked the housekeeper Su not to worry, because this was not his dying wish, because he was not ready to die yet. At this time, the battle in the forest continued. Lao Yu was ready to attack the leader, but suddenly heard Mr. E scream and was distracted. The leader Zhou used this moment and snuck up on Lao Yu. Without thinking twice, he raised his sword over his head and pierced the traitor through and through. Captain Yu fell to the ground, saying the leader's name. Leader Zhou managed to tell him that if he wanted revenge, he should go to hell and wait for him there. Lao Yu and Mr. He were defeated by father and son. Zhen said that the secondary characters were finished, it was time to move on to the main villain. Director Yan began to shout that they could not attempt to kill him, because if he died, then all the residents of the besieged city would be buried with him. At this moment, the leader spoke to him. Zhou said that he suspected the betrayal of some people, but did not think that Director Yan would be involved in this. He asked how Yan dared to dispose of the lives of the city's residents. Yan told the leader that although he did not do anything special for the city, he still worked hard all this time and would not allow his insignificant son to step over him. The director began to threaten that he had a button in his hands, pressing which would turn all the granaries of the city into dust. Then he asked Zhen where his son Yan Baeksan was now. Zhen smiled and replied that his son was now in a safe place, but if the director pressed the button, he would make them both feel sorry. At that moment, everyone heard someone's voice from behind the trees. He said that such indecisiveness was not typical of official Yan. Suddenly, a warrior appeared from behind the branches of the tree. He continued to talk to Director Yan, saying that he would tell him some interesting news. And this interesting news was that his son Yan Baeksan no longer existed in this world. Director Yan was furious at what he heard and at that moment decided to take revenge on Zhen by pressing the detonator button. But Zhen managed to react by knocking the button out of Director Yan's hands and holding a knife to his throat, saying that Director Yan should go after his son. Suddenly, sword strikes sounded in front of Zhen and he managed to jump back from Director Yan. Zhen concentrated, because he did not have time to understand what happened, but suddenly he was very surprised by what he saw with his own eyes. In front of him, he saw the warrior who was sitting on the tree. It was the 6th rank warrior, Lu Yushan. He held Director Yan by the collar and told Zhen that trying to eliminate his employer in front of him was not playing by the rules. Warrior Yunshan continued to say that Director Yan was his prey and today he would have to inconvenience some people and get what he deserved. Director Yan shouted that Lu Yunshan must eliminate both of them and that he would increase his reward fourfold. The warrior answered him that the director apparently did not understand the whole situation, because his son was no longer there. Everything that belonged to him was already destroyed and the only one who could save him now was him. Then Lu Yunshan said that he was laying claim to all of Director Yan's property and that such a reward would be quite enough for him. At that moment, Lan Shi appeared. He said that he had dealt with all the traitors' assistants. Zhen told him not to come closer, because there was a very strong 6th rank warrior standing in front of them. Lan Shi couldn't believe his ears and asked again what rank this warrior had. Zhen repeated his words to him again. Suddenly, the leader of Zhou stepped forward and ordered his son and Lan Shi to get out of here, and he would hold him off for now. Zhen told his father not to talk nonsense, because in his condition he wouldn't be able to hold out for long. Lan Shi looked anxiously at his father and son and decided that he had to act. He quickly ran away from them into the depths of the forest. Lu Yunshan followed the guy at lightning speed. He shouted that he had not given him permission to run away and was ready to injure Lan Shi. Zhen repelled the man's attack, saying that some 6th rank warrior cannot be omnipotent. Lu Yunshan smiled arrogantly and answered the guy. He said that if those insignificant warriors could not eliminate him yet, it does not mean that Zhen can compete with him. Suddenly, the warrior sensed something was wrong. The leader Zhou attacked him from behind and the man could not foresee it. Lu Yunshan miraculously managed to dodge the blow and immediately attacked in response. Zhou also parried the enemy's blow. At this moment, Lan Shi burst into the battlefield. He shouted for the leader and Zhen to quickly get into the car. Before the warrior Lu had time to react, Zhen instantly grabbed his father and rushed towards the car. They jumped into the back of the car and Zhen shouted forward and then threw a couple of grenades in order to have time to escape. Lu Yunshan ran after them and saw the grenades flying straight at him. He cut them and the fire burst out, hiding the car moving away. At this time, Director Yan was watching him. He said that this killer is as useless as the others, and if he can't get something, then he won't let others dream of it, and raised the detonator button up. Lu Yunshan quickly reacted and pierced Director Yan's cloak to the tree with his sword to immobilize his hand. He shouted that Director Yan was an ungrateful bastard and that he also didn't mind sending him to his son. Director Yan's gaze became empty and he laughed nervously because the button was still in his hands and he pressed it. he had nothing more to lose. After pressing the button, all the shit storage facilities in the city detonated and exploded. People were horrified and despaired by what they saw. In one moment they lost all their supplies. Captain Shu, standing at his post, heard the sounds of explosions in the city. A warrior was approaching the captain from the city. He ran with all his might and shouted that all the grain storage facilities had been blown up. Captain Shu was horrified by this news. He wondered if this was an order from the head and official Yan. Suddenly, the warrior looked ahead and shouted that zombies were advancing on them. A crowd of monsters of all kinds that could be imagined was approaching the borders of the city, wanting to destroy everything around them. Captain Shu and the other warriors immediately reacted and began to defend the gate leading to the safe zone. The captain shouted that until all the people were evacuated, all the warriors were obliged to hold out to the last, even if they had to sacrifice their lives. There were too many zombies. They began to suppress the defense. One of the monsters sank its teeth into Captain Shu's sword, which deprived him of the ability to defend himself. Suddenly, a huge zombie appeared from behind the captain, who was ready to devour him. Shu realized that he would not have time to do anything and prepared for death, but suddenly a sharp shot rang out and the zombie was shot in the head. The one who eliminated this zombie was Zhou Zhen. He managed to shoot from his bow while in the back of the car. Captain Shu was happy. He shouted that the leader had returned, and with him Zhen and Lan Shi. At that moment, the warrior standing behind him reported that all the residents had already entered the city to a safe area. The captain heard him and ordered to hold the defense and close the entrance to the city. Finally, the gates to the city were closed and everyone was safe. The leader and his team stood on the wall, watching the situation. Shu said that he could not even think that all this was happening because of Director Yang Chuan. He added that the losses among the soldiers were very serious, and all the grain storage facilities were blown up. The situation was very serious. The leader replied that there were too many zombies advancing, and even if they had a few more 5th-rank warriors, it would still be hard to hold them back. Zhen joined the conversation and said that now they should first evacuate people, and then fight back against the zombies. The leader exchanged glances with Commander Shu, smiled and said that his son still had a mindset aimed at managing the city. Then the housekeeper Su came up to them and offered everyone a drink of water. Zhen took a glass and drank the water. Leader Zhou told his son that he said everything correctly. The guy smiled back and said that he would then go help with the evacuation. Suddenly, Zhen felt unwell, his head was spinning. The leader continued talking to his son. He said that although Zhen was right, but unfortunately all the grain storage facilities were destroyed and they could not evacuate many people. The housekeeper Su supported Zhen on his feet. Her eyes were full of sadness. She asked if the leader was sure of his actions. Leader Zhou laughed and said that this was his first and last whim as a leader. The helicopter took off and soared high above the city. Zhen suddenly woke up and realized that he was no longer on the wall. He slowly stood up and turned to Lan Shi and the housekeeper Su Junwen, asking why he was in the helicopter. Lan Shi turned to him and with tears in his eyes replied that Leader Zhou insisted on staying in the city. Zhen was shocked by these words. He looked out of the helicopter to see for himself and tears appeared in his eyes. He realized that his father gave them the opportunity to escape, but sacrificed himself, fighting until victory. The leader, meanwhile, was still standing with Commander Shu on the wall. He told Shu to try to survive. Shu laughed and replied that from the moment he became the garrison commander, his life no longer belonged to him. The leader announced an order that the soldiers who wanted to leave the city must protect the people who did not have the fighting ability during the evacuation. And the soldiers who wanted to stay here with him, let them fight to the end and bring order to this purgatory. The leader gathered his courage and prepared for battle. Even at this moment he thought about his son, that even when all the people doubted him, his father continued to believe in him. Zhou jumped off the wall into the very depths of hell, going into his last battle with words of faith in Zhen, who would one day become the brightest star in this apocalypse. The helicopter flew high above the city and forest expanses. Zhen clutched his head in despair. He still could not believe what had happened. Lan Shi tried to calm the boy down. He said that the leader did this to protect his son. Tears rolled down Zhen's eyes. He said that in this situation they were just deserters. He said that everything should not have ended like this for his father and the people of the city. The boy was overwhelmed with grief. He believed that if he had learned about director Yan Chuan's intentions earlier, these terrible events would not have happened. Then Zhen heard the words that the leader of Zhou once said, that in these troubled times, every day lived as a gift. Su Junwen reminded the boy of his father's words and said that he was not to blame for what happened, because no one can predict their fate. The girl also said that a happily lived life is the greatest consolation for people who are no longer with us. Lan Shi supported the words of the housekeeper Su and told Zhen that they should live on. Suddenly, their helicopter lost control. Huge claws of a monster appeared in the doorway, which almost touched Zhen. Su said with horror in her voice that they were attacked by monsters. It was becoming increasingly difficult to control the helicopter. The young people were surrounded by a flock of huge birds that were trying to shoot down the helicopter and tear apart their prey. Lan Shi got up from his seat, went to the exit and said that he would now drive away these birds. Zhen stepped forward and ordered the boy to stay and protect the housekeeper Su. He tied a rope around himself and quickly jumped off the helicopter. Zhou Zhen used a jump attack and attacked the monsters. He struck them one after another. Despite all his attacks, the birds continued to circle around the helicopter, not leaving their target. They were quite stubborn. Suddenly a loud roar was heard. It was the roar of a monster. Zhen did not immediately understand what kind of sound it was. Zhen turned around and was horrified by what he saw. A huge, angry dragon appeared in front of them and looked at the helicopter. The monster roared loudly, filling everyone in front of it with fear. After that, it changed its direction and flew away from the helicopter without attacking them. Zhen returned to the helicopter and exhaled. He was glad that they did not interest the dragon and it flew away. Lan Shi said that it was the first time he saw such a huge monster. Zhen turned to Su Junwen. He said that he did not expect her to fly the helicopter so skillfully. The girl told him that he should not overpraise her, because before the disaster, her family interrupted her before she could finish her speech. Lan Shi shouted at them to look ahead. A lake appeared in front of them, and behind it was a city. They flew towards that city. Lan Shi took out a map. He said that he bought it from a wandering warrior several years ago. The guy pointed to a point on the map and said that if this map is correct, then the city they just saw is in this place. Zhen looked closely at the map. He saw that the city had a majestic named Titan. Suddenly, Mistress Su turned to the young people. She said that in the battle with the monsters, they damaged the tail section of the helicopter and needed to land urgently. Zhen agreed that it was necessary to land, especially since traveling by helicopter attracts a lot of attention. When the guys landed, Zhen said that it was not even 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the city of Titan was about 20 kilometers away from them. They should have time to get there before nightfall. Having taken everything they needed from the helicopter, the young people went through the forest grove in the direction of the city. Suddenly, Mistress Su got scared and screamed. Someone made a noise in the bushes in front of her and the silhouette of a monster appeared. Zhen reacted instantly, took out his blade and was about to attack this monster. A huge, fluffy and very cute hamster appeared in front of the guys, who looked at the wanderers in surprise. Mistress Su did not expect that this charming animal would turn out to be a monster. Zhen said not to be afraid of it, since it does not attack people. He said that it was the first time he saw her in such a panic and realized that Su was probably leaving the city for the first time. The girl apologized for the noise. The guy looked at the compass and map and thought that since they came across this animal on the way, they must be near a crowd of people. The guys came out of the forest and found a highway. Lan Shi came out first and said that by heading along the road they could quickly get to the city. Suddenly, the guy saw a car moving in their direction. He took out his weapon and stood in front of Zhen and Su to protect them, because there might be dangerous people in the car. Zhen also took out his weapon, a bow and arrow, to be ready to protect Su Junwen. The car stopped in front of the guys. A man looked out from the back. It was a man. He looked closely at the young people standing on the road. But Su Junwen interested him the most of all of these wanderers. Apparently he really liked her. He looked her up and down and thought that this girl looked very attractive. At this moment, Zhen suddenly fired 3 arrows, which flew very close to the man's face. The 3 men in the back of the car were alarmed, but these arrows were intended for 3 snakes that were going to attack them from behind. The driver of the car looked into the side mirror of the car and thought that this wanderer was a very accurate shooter with a bow. With a serious expression, Zhen addressed the people in the car, telling them to be careful, as this was a wild area and danger could be everywhere. The man, past whom the arrows flew, became furious and was about to attack Zhen, but the driver of the car stopped him, saying that they had to hurry. The car drove off, leaving the wanderers alone on the empty road. Lan Shi said that if those people attacked them, he would fight them with all his might. Su realized that the man liked her and began to apologize for causing so much trouble. Zhen told her that it was not her fault that she had grown up to be such a beauty. The boys headed towards the city. Zhen told Lan Shi that he still needed to train to defeat those men. Mistress Su crouched down at this time, leaning over the road. She smeared her face with road dirt and dust so as not to attract attention with her beauty and said that it should be a little easier now. The guys looked at her. Apparently they did not appreciate the girl's efforts. At that time, the man in the back of the truck turned to his boss. He asked why he was stopped, because there was such a beautiful girl there. The driver replied that it was better not to mess with a guy with a bow and arrows, especially since they had important business and most likely they would meet them again while they were in this city. Soon, the outskirts of the city of Titan appeared in front of the travelers. A beautiful creature of the second level, a cross between a deer and a horse, opened their eyes. Zhen looked at this majestic animal with delight and bewilderment. Suddenly, a man approached him and asked if they needed a cart. The man said that it would be difficult to find another cart with horses, and his services were not that expensive. While Su admired this beautiful animal, Zhen negotiated a trip to Titan and asked the cost. The carrier realized that the guys were not local, and thought that he was lucky, because he could get more money from them. Suddenly, they were surrounded by other carriers who offered their services and convinced Zhen that their transport was the cheapest and fastest. The first carrier Zhen negotiated with threw everyone back. He did not want to lose his earnings and said that his services would cost only a part of the lowest white crystal and he was ready to go now. The guys went to the city. Zhen asked the carrier if the man himself caught this beautiful animal. The man answered that it was not that good and bought it from the trainers by giving him the middle blue crystal. Zhen was surprised to hear about the trainers. He decided to ask the carrier about them. The man answered that the trainers are also warriors who have the skills to tame some animals. They can use them in battles or for sale. The carrier looked at the guys and said that apparently they came to Titan from afar and asked if they were going to relatives. After his question, Zhen became sad. Apparently he was touched by the conversation about relatives and remembered his father. The man realized that he asked them an awkward question and apologized for his curiosity, saying that he would not interfere in their affairs. Su looked at Zhen and told him not to suffer like that, because his father definitely wouldn't want that. The guy asked her why she thought he was suffering. Zhen told the girl that he was just thinking about what to do in this new city of Titan. Finally, the guys got to this city. In front of them was a large, beautiful city surrounded by high walls. The carrier told them that they had finally arrived. The entrance to the city cost 1 star. In front of the entrance, they were selling city maps and Su went to buy one. Zhen said that it was not for nothing that Titan was a central city, even if the entrance to it was paid. The guys entered the city and walked through the 5th district, which belonged to the outer zone and was considered something like a slum. Zhen asked the hostess Su if there were any hotels in the city. She looked at the map and replied that she would look for one now. They found one of the nearby hotels, but when they approached it, they saw that it was in a terrible, uninhabitable state. Afterwards, they sat down on a bench to rest. Zhen sighed heavily. He did not think that it would be so difficult to find a normal hotel. Su continued to carefully study the map and look for other options. Suddenly, the owner Su said that she found a hotel with a suitable name where they could stay. Finally, the young people reached this hotel. In front of them was a huge building with a glass facade, which looked very impressive. An attractive girl came out to them and greeted them at the hotel called Song, asking the guys if they would like to stay there. Zhen said that they would like to stay there. The girl asked them to follow her to register them at the hotel. Once inside, the hotel worker told them that the cost of a regular room was 2 low-grade crystals. Lan Shi was shocked by what he heard, and asked if they charged that price per day. Su was also surprised by this information. Zhen came up, gave the crystals and said that they were checking in. It was a bit expensive, but better than staying in the first hotel, where there were no windows. A little later, Zhen was sitting in his room and recalling his father. He told him that they were fine. Suddenly there was a knock on his door. The mistress Su came to him. Zhen was surprised by her arrival and asked about the reason for her visit. Su asked to come in. She had a serious conversation with him. Su Junwen started the conversation, but she could not gather her thoughts to talk to Zhen. The guy said that if she wanted to talk to him, then she should speak directly. The girl said that she calculated and realized that their money would only be enough for 1 week of stay in this hotel. Zhen was shocked by such news. The next day, the guys went out to inspect the surroundings. Lan Shi noticed that the local warriors had quite high ranks. Zhen replied that in such a huge city, the rank corresponds to the level of rights. After listening to his words, Lan Shi came to the conclusion that a person with the same rank as him, even with all the desire, could not become a soldier. Zhen told him not to be upset, because the rank can be raised. Despite the great competition in this city, there are enough resources. Lan Shi said that he will try very hard. Zhen remembered the words of Mistress Su about the lack of funds for living. In fact, there were more than 1,700 white and several blue crystals in his backpack, but in order to stay in this city, he will have to save. At this moment, a charming girl approached them and grabbed Lan Zai's hand. She noticed that they were confused and offered to answer their questions for an additional fee. Zhen laughed at the fact that the soldiers would have to buy information from her. Lan Shi pulled his hand out of her embrace. The girl asked if they did not have money. She approached Zhen and whispered in his ear that her source of information was verified and that she had an exclusive map of the locations of monsters outside of Titan and that it cost only 1 white crystal. Zhen bought the map from her. The girl said goodbye and told them to be careful. Lan Shi said that it looked like a robbery, but Zhen replied that they did not know this city and it was better to spend a little money than just wandering the streets. With the help of the map, the guys arrived at their first destination. It was a huge, gloomy and gray building. They entered inside and saw small offices closed by a glass wall, behind which the building's employees sat. They took their turn. Having reached the service window, the worker handed the guys forms in which they had to fill in personal information. Zhen filled out his form and carefully double-checked all the information. He indicated his name, age, height, gender, and warrior rank. The worker asked the guy to put his palm on the device to make sure that his real strength matched the information he entered. Zhen put his palm on the scanner and thought that this city has very advanced technology. The scanner confirmed that he is a warrior in training. The girl looked at the guy with disdain because of his low rank and said that now he can join the warrior union and will be able to take tasks here, and he must also pay a membership fee every 3 months. Then Lan Shi put his palm on the scanner and his second rank was confirmed. The worker congratulated him more cordially and gave him a nameplate. Lan Shi asked Zhen why they needed to register there. Zhen told him that this is the fastest way to increase the rank and get money. Zhen looked at the map and found a task for himself. He told Shi that they were of different ranks and he did not need to go on a task with him. Lan Shi objected, saying that he should protect him. Zhen said that Lan Shi had been with him for a long time, but he still did not understand that he did not need protection. Lan Shi asked about Zhen's training, because he should not have missed it. At that moment, Zhen threw a blue crystal into his hands. Lan Shi was surprised and said that they did not have money now and he did not need this crystal. Zhen told him to calm down, because this was his personal money, which Mistress Su did not know about. The green bus moved along the highway along the forest grove. There were a lot of people on the bus. Everyone was indignant, saying that they were cramped and wanted to get to their destination as quickly as possible. Finally the bus arrived. People began to get off. One man said that they had arrived at the Sun Bazaar and those who wanted to go hunting could rent a car right at the entrance. Zhen walked through the bazaar. He did not expect that such a lively place could be far from the city. While Zhen was walking through the bazaar, one merchant offered him to rent a car, saying that his prices were the lowest. The guy saw a motorcycle and asked the cost of renting it. The merchant replied that the deposit was 2 white crystals. 1 day costs 5 stars and gasoline for an additional fee. Zhen also pointed out a place on the map and asked how much gasoline would be needed to get there. The man replied that even 5th rank warriors do not go to the indicated area since it is a one-way road. The guy confidently looked at the merchant and said that he wanted to go in this direction and get to this location. Once in this place, Zhen saw how wild coyotes devoured the food they had obtained before. Suddenly, one of the monsters was struck by a shot. It was Zhen. He was surprised and glad that he received as many as 1,600 experience points from such a small monster. The guy thought that these rocks and swampy terrain would become his training ground for some time. Zhen took out his bow for hunting monsters, but noticed that the arrows he used were already worn out, and he had not bought new ones. Wild coyotes began to surround the guy. He decided that he had a good opportunity to practice hand-to-hand combat and took out his knife. The animals began to attack Zhen, but he was not afraid and entered the battle. In the end, the guy defeated all the monsters that attacked him. He sat down to rest and look at the catch. His catch was 2 blue crystals, which turned out to be a good catch. Zhen decided to become even stronger. His skills as a thief alone were not enough for him. The guy had to study the power of the stars. Arriving back at the bazaar, Zhen approached the merchant and returned the rented motorcycle to him. The man asked Zhen if he had reached the beast lair. The guy evaded the answer and said that he almost did. As Zhen walked away, the merchant asked him if he wasn't afraid of not coming back, but he didn't get an answer. When Zhen returned to the hotel, Mistress Su and Lan Shi met him and saw his shabby appearance. They began to ask why he was like that and whether he had been attacked. The guy smiled and said that the training was tougher than he expected. Zhen then asked Lan Shi if his level had increased thanks to the blue crystal. The guy replied that thanks to it, he would increase his rank to level 3 in the coming days. Su Junwen was indignant at Zhen's action, since they already had little money. He told her not to worry about it. The guy took out 2 blue crystals and showed them to her, saying that they were his catch of the day. The girl was surprised that it was only a day's catch. He then looked at Su and said that she would have to work hard in the next few days. She was confused. Zhen said that there was no need to stay in the hotel anymore, because 2 blue crystals should be enough to buy an apartment in this city. The guy was training and hunting again in this dangerous rocky area. Having taken out his catch in the form of a blue crystal, he thought that this was a really good place for training and earning money, because this week he collected almost 20 blue crystals. But still, there were not many animals left in this place and it was time to find some other way to earn money. The guy was going to drink a potion to restore strength and health, when his attention was drawn to something interesting. Unusual mushrooms were hidden under a stone block. The guy looked at them and thought that these mushrooms could be very rare. He remembered the words of the girl from whom he bought the map. Then she told him that if he found some plants outside the city that he had not seen before, he should definitely collect them. Such plants are mostly mutants that have absorbed star power, and this is a great rarity. The guy picked one mushroom and realized that it was a mutated plant, because even he could feel the star power in it. A group of people gathered on the city streets. They were standing and discussing something. At that moment, Zhen arrived from training. One of the guys said that Zhen was just crazy and if you didn't know his rank, then you could really start to doubt that he went to fight huge monsters every day. The guys greeted him. One sarcastically asked if he had managed to survive again. The second called him a masochist, and the third asked if he was afraid of not returning from hunting someday. Zhen got to the merchant and returned the motorcycle to him. The man said that the guy had arrived early today. Zhen replied that he wanted to go to the city market today. The merchant was surprised that this crazy guy even went shopping. The guy arrived at the market in the city of Titan. The perfume merchant was advertising his goods, saying that there was only one such perfume in the whole city and it cost 1 white crystal of the highest grade. A warrior was passing by at that moment and the merchant recommended buying this perfume for his beloved, saying that he would sell it cheaper. The warrior girl grabbed the seller, telling him to open his eyes, because she was a girl. The man immediately began to apologize to her. At that moment, Zhen approached his shop, smelled the perfume and said that he would buy it for 1 medium white crystal. The merchant shouted that he would sell it, although it was lower than his offer. He was glad that he was saved from the female warrior. Zhen looked at the perfume and thought that it would be a good gift for Su Junwen. At that time, the merchant continued to convince another customer that his perfume was a limited edition and that there was no one else like it. The guy then walked to an empty alley and made sure that there was no one around. He opened a portal and took out the fur skins of the monsters he had caught. Zhen put the goods up for sale and indicated the prices. 1 skin of a 3rd-rank mutant in a damaged state cost 1 low white crystal. A skin in good condition cost 1 medium white crystal. A man came up, looked at the goods and asked if he could buy it cheaper. Zhen replied that he did not bargain. The man looked at the guy and was surprised, because he looked like a newbie, but he managed to get so many skins of third-rank monsters, and his goods were in perfect order and good condition. After thinking for a while, the man said that he would buy all the goods from him. He gave Zhen a business card and offered to be friends, saying that his name was Chong Zhan. He was a 6th-rank warrior. While the man was loading the purchased goods into the car, Zhen read that the business card said equipment store, which brings victory. Zhen asked Chong if he was not going to check the goods before leaving. The man replied that he trusted his friends and one look was enough for him to understand whether the goods were good. Chong was about to leave and told Zhen that if he needed any equipment, he could contact him. Zhen heard him and wished him a good trip. Another man who saw the goods from the guy was surprised at how quickly he was able to sell everything. The man turned to his commander. He said that if they had such skins, then their chances of success would be higher. The commander said to stop this talk. After all, it was not that important to them. The man began to complain. He said that they had already spent 5 days on this mission. Did they really have to break the contract? At this point, Zhen interrupted their conversation. He said that if it was all about the armor, then he understood something about it. He said that perhaps they could come to an agreement. The commander asked the guy if he could determine the defects of the armor. Zhen said that he could do it. The other man replied that it was unlikely that a newbie like him understood this. Most likely he had not even seen steel armor yet, and added that if he wanted to deceive, then let him find other victims for this. Zhen said that the 4th-rank steel armor activates a shield during attacks and many 7th-rank warriors cannot cope with it. Zhen guessed that the men didn't know about it. They took on a mission with a 4th-rank mutant, but didn't expect it to be so difficult to deal with. The captain asked Zhen why they should trust him. The guy replied that he wasn't forcing them to do so. The man asked the price of the guy's services. Zhen replied that he would take 1 lower blue crystal from them. The second man asked him why he wouldn't go on this mission alone if he was charging such a price. Zhen said that the reward for this mission was 5 crystals and that by accepting his help, they would still be in the black, and if they broke the contract, they would suffer losses. The commander introduced himself. His name was Xiao Hang. He said that he hoped that the guy's information was true, otherwise unpleasant consequences awaited him. Zhou Zhen also introduced himself, said his name and shook the commander's hand, congratulating him in advance on the successful completion of the mission. The guy left them. Commander Xiao looked at him suspiciously. The second man was indignant and said that Zhen could not be trusted. The captain answered him that he felt that Zhen was not as simple as he might seem. A little later, Zhen met with Lan Shi and Mistress Su. The girl gave them several options for houses to buy that might suit them. The guys were surprised and praised her for finding so many good options in such a short time. Su replied that this was her job. Zhen showed the guys a house that he liked. Su said that this house was in the 1st district, so it cost more. Lan Shi asked about this district because rich people lived there. Zhen said that if this district was for the rich, then they should experience what a rich life is. The guys came to look at their new house. The house was much more beautiful than in the photos. This house was worth its money. The realtor told Zhen that he had already given the keys to the house to his wife, wished her good fortune and further cooperation. Su Junwen explained to Zhen that she did not have time to explain everything to the manager, so he considered them spouses. The guy replied that there was nothing to worry about. At that moment, Zhen remembered that he had prepared a gift for the girl and handed her a bottle of perfume. Su was very touched by the guy's attention. Sympathy arose between them and the scent of love reigned everywhere. Lan Shi had to carry all the things on himself again and he was indignant that they forgot about him and dumped all the hardest work on him. Later, Zhen arrived at the local market. He was looking for new arrows for his bow. At that moment, there were warriors at this market whom Zhen met on the way to Titan. One of the men noticed Zhen and told the boss that this was the guy they met on the road. The boss asked him if he still couldn't forget the girl who was with this guy. The man replied that he still couldn't forget her. Apparently it was love at first sight. The boss replied that he wouldn't stop him, but let him do it after their business was completed. The man replied that he understood everything and wouldn't let him down. The man looked after Zhen and said that he was lucky today. Zhen realized that this warrior had restrained himself and would not approach him and thought that this warrior was lucky today, because he was already prepared for battle. Then Zhen rented a motorcycle again and went to train and mine crystals. An obstacle appeared on his way and he stopped the motorcycle. Several cars and a squad of warriors stood in front of him. One of the warriors ordered him to get out of here, because these swampy lands belonged to a gang called the Milky Way. Zhen was indignant that these lands belonged to some gang. He asked the warrior what would happen if he disobeyed. The warrior grabbed Zhen by the hair and asked if such an insignificant warrior trainee was really tired of living. The guy looked at the warrior angrily and said that he would have to answer for his words. At the same time, in this area, the warrior asked the guide if there really were colorful mushrooms in this area. The guide told warrior Sun Tang that his information was true, and that the collection of these mushrooms was complicated by the red wolves that lived here. Warrior Sun Tang said to eliminate all mutants nearby and find these colored mushrooms. The guide asked if his debt would be forgiven if the mushrooms were found. Sun Tang replied that the man should get out of here and if successful, his debts would be cancelled. The man was happy with this answer and thought that Sun Tang was not the leader of the Milky Way gang for nothing, because even he, a fourth-rank warrior, felt like a nobody in front of him. Sun Tang stood and watched as the warriors cleared the area with monsters. At that moment he received a call and he accepted the call. He was told that some guy had broken into this area and he had already eliminated 3 warriors from their squad. The man was shocked that 3 fifth-rank warriors had been eliminated. He began to scream and ask why his warriors were so insignificant. Sun Tang said that the man who eliminated people from their gang should not run away. He also added that half of the people should look for mushrooms, and the other half should search the area, and if they find any strangers, they should eliminate them without delay. At this moment, Zhen hid behind the rocks to catch his breath and rest a little. The guy looked at the table of his abilities and was glad that he had new ones, otherwise it would not be easy for him to eliminate 3 fifth-rank warriors. Suddenly, a 4th-rank warrior appeared. He noticed traces of a man and hurried to report it. But the warriors did not have time to get to him. Zhen appeared in front of this warrior with lightning speed and eliminated him. When Song Tang and the warriors approached the call of their comrade, they were shocked by the sight they saw. Song Tang was furious. He could not understand who dared to go against them and managed to eliminate so many of his people. The entire squad continued to search the entire territory to find and eliminate their enemy. Zhen hid behind a boulder and watched the warriors. He realized that the man standing in the center was the leader of the gang and he needed to figure out how to get rid of him. The guy looked at the tall, strong man. He noticed that he was a warrior of the 7th rank. He was very strong. Zhen panicked. He realized that in a battle with such a strong warrior, his speed would not help at all. The guy decided to abandon his original plan and using his lightning speed, disappeared from this place. When he moved away to a safe distance, he sat down to rest and drink water. Zhen was upset that his plans were interfered with by this gang. Suddenly, he heard some noise from the depths of the forest. He got up and went into the forest to find out what was going on. Suddenly, Zhen stepped on something in the grass. He picked up the object and it turned out to be a human bone. Then he raised his head and saw a terrifying picture. In front of his eyes was a huge web, on which there were many human remains. The guy realized that he was in big trouble and at that moment a ball of some kind of disgusting slime flew towards him. Zhen was waiting for danger, so he quickly reacted and jumped back, dodging the attack. A disgusting, huge, spider monster sat on its web and was ready to attack and absorb Zhen. The spider jumped off the web and quickly headed towards the guy. Zhen prepared for battle and took out his bow and arrows. He fired his arrows at the monster, but none of the arrows could pierce its durable shell. In response, the spider began to attack the guy with its slime, which dissolved everything it touched. Zhen skillfully maneuvered, dodging the monster's attacks. The monster did not give in to the guy and used its agility and speed to catch up with its victim. Zhen hid behind a tree. He realized that he had no way to break through its shell, and the spider's speed was amazing. This time it would not be easy to win. Suddenly, the spider caught up with Zhen and shot him with its poisonous mucus. The guy miraculously managed to jump and dodge the attack, but his balance was lost. He fell to the ground and a huge monster hung over his body. The spider looked at the victim with its scarlet, bloody eyes and roared loudly. Zhen managed to get his blade and pointed it straight at the monster's mouth. He swung his hand sharply and cut off one of the spider's fangs. The monster roared from the sharp pain and recoiled from his offender. Zhen had the opportunity to get up and take a more advantageous position. Suddenly, the guy's blade began to shine. He was very surprised by what was happening and realized that this was a manifestation of star power. The radiance spread and Zhen was engulfed in a bright light and a stream of power. Finally, the guy became a first-rank warrior. Two men were driving in a car. A bald man with a mustache turned to his boss Hua and said that they made good money this time. Suddenly, the man got scared and slammed on the brakes, saying that there was someone on the road ahead. Amazingly, the car managed to stop and not hit the young man in its path. The bald man climbed out of the car window and shouted at the guy. He asked if he really wanted to get under his wheels. Zhen said hello, smiled and asked if the man could give him a ride. The enraged man refused him. Zhen realized that the man was in a bad mood and asked him not to get angry. He did not want to provoke an accident. The man still didn't want to give Zhen a ride, but his boss told the guy to get in the car and they would give him a ride. The driver told the guy that he was lucky that boss Hua let him get in the car. Zhen bowed and thanked the boss. Zhen jumped into the back of the car. There were animal skins, boxes, the squad's catch and a guy with blonde hair sitting there. He sat down and an unfamiliar blonde guy offered him a cigarette. Zhen thanked him but refused, saying that he didn't smoke. He also asked what squad they were, since he had recently arrived in Titan and didn't know many people. Taking a cigarette out of the pack with his teeth, the guy replied that they were a squad called Pattern. Zhen then asked the guy if he knew any places in Titan where he could practice with star power. The guy replied that there was one place in the 3rd district. There was a warrior training center there, but it was not cheap. The Pattern squad car took Zhen to the outer district of Titan City. The guy got out of the car. Zhen thanked the squad members and said that he was indebted to them. The bald driver waved his hand and drove off in his direction. Heading towards his home, Zhen thought that since he had reached the 1st rank, he should think about how to increase his level. Lan Shi met Zhen at his home. He happily told him that he had already reached the 3rd rank. Zhen was pleasantly surprised by this news. Lan Shi rushed into Zhen's arms with gratitude. He said that this result was due to the blue crystals that he received from Zhen. Zhen smiled and said that he had also achieved some success. Lan Shi happily asked if Zhen had really become a 1st-rank warrior. Su Junwen was very happy about his success and burst into tears of happiness. The boys gathered around the table to celebrate. Lan Shi said that he was sure that Zhen's life would only get better. Everyone raised their glasses in his honor. The next day, the boys came to the warrior training center. Lan Shi said that the training here was obviously very expensive. Zhen replied that their main goal was to increase their levels, and the price was not so important. Upon entering the building, the boys saw many warriors who had 4th and 6th rank skills. Lan Shi was surprised at how high ranks these people had. Zhen agreed with him and thought that selling the web of the spider he had eliminated for a huge price was very appropriate, because thanks to this he was able to pay for training here. A cute girl who obviously worked in this center approached the boys. She said that if they needed training, they should follow her. Choosing the necessary functions on the display, the girl asked what level of training they needed. Zhen answered that they could open a 3rd-level hall first. She answered that to open this hall, they needed to pay 1 blue crystal and gave them a token to open the hall. The girl also added that they needed to sign a contract before entering. Lan Shi took the token and confidently told Zhen that he would not let him down. Zhen told him to get ready and quickly go to the training hall. Then Zhen approached the girl again and asked her to open the 5th-level hall for him. The girl was very surprised by his request. She asked if he had made a mistake in his choice. Zhen confirmed his words and asked to open the hall for him faster. The girl was very worried. She warned the guy that this was not a virtual training hall and that they only fought real monsters there. Zhen told her that he knew about it and pointing his finger at the screen. He pointed to the 5th-rank mutant gorilla, saying that he chose it. When Zhen headed into the hall, the girl looked after him. She thought that this mutant gorilla was about level 6 and did the guy really decide to eliminate himself in this way? Zhen approached his hall, where an employee was waiting for him. who showed him where to insert the token to enter and wished him luck. While in front of the door, Zhen thought that even through the closed door, the dangerous aura of this mutant could be felt. At this moment, 3 warriors were walking down the corridor. They saw Zhen standing in front of the door. One of them was quite arrogant. He sarcastically said that this was the first time he saw such a way to leave this world. This guy laughed at Zhen and said that in his place, he would have been better off eliminating himself without entering the training hall. Zhen glared menacingly at these warriors and replied that it was none of their business what he was doing. The 3 guys were shocked by his answer. One of the warriors got angry and shouted to Zhen that he should apologize to their master right now. Zhen turned around and looked at those arrogant warriors with disdain and asked if they also wanted to enter this training hall with him. The 3 guys were speechless. They thought that this guy was crazy. Not only did he not apologize, but he was also suggesting that they go together to this monster. Zhen looked at them menacingly and asked if they didn't have the courage to enter this training hall. He then opened the door and added that they could go back to where they came from if they could only throw empty and stupid phrases. The 3 warriors were confused. One of them wondered how this guy actually dared to enter the hall with that horrible monster. Another noticed that Zhen was only rank 1. The boss of this trio was clearly not happy with what was happening. One of the warriors turned to his boss, Mr. Luo. He told him not to be nervous about what had happened, because it was obvious that the first-rank warrior was not himself. Mr. Luo smiled wryly and said that this guy was lucky, because he would not eliminate him, which would not be a good outcome for the guy. Let the gorilla monster do it for him. Entering the training room, in the semi-darkness and haze, Zhen saw an incredibly huge gorilla monster. He was unconscious and lying on the floor. Suddenly, a notification sounded in the hall that the biological tranquilizer was over and the warrior should be ready for battle. Zhen prepared himself. He was in a fighting stance and held his blades tightly in his hands. The guy turned to the gorilla, saying that it was up to him whether he could advance to the 2nd rank. The gorilla was still lying on the floor, but after hearing the words, its eyes opened sharply and glowed with anger. The monster rose to his feet, roared and beat his chest, making it clear that he was a strong opponent of the 6th level and was not to be trifled with. The warriors standing outside the door were talking animatedly about what was happening. They said that they had never seen such a monster or heard such a powerful roar. Luo laughed and said that this kid probably wasn't breathing anymore. Continuing to mock Zheni, Mr. Luo suggested that his friends come into the hall after the fight and retrieve the guy's body. Suddenly, a heavy thump sounded in the training hall. Everyone was startled out of surprise. The not-so-brave Luo said that he probably wouldn't have to take the body away, since the monster probably wouldn't leave anything behind. Mr. Luo approached the employee of the center and asked to give him a video of the fight. He was interested to see the defeat of this cheeky guy. The employee replied that they can't show the personal training of their guests. Luo, with a haughty look, did not accept the employee's answer, saying that a man who would soon be gone could not have personal information. Again, the sounds of fighting came from the training room. Luo was confused. He didn't understand what was going on there. The other warrior was surprised that the guy hadn't been eliminated yet. 30 minutes had passed since Zhenya's battle with the gorilla monster had started. The sounds of battle were still coming from behind the door. Everyone was very surprised at the resilience of a guy who was only rank 1. Suddenly, Mr. Luo slapped his friend's face. The warrior did not expect this turn of events. The guy screamed and asked Boss Luo why he hit him. Luo realized that his friend was hurt and came to his senses. He thought for a moment that it was all a dream since Zhen was still fighting. Mr. Luo couldn't believe how a first-rank warrior could defeat a mutant gorilla and could last in the training hall for half an hour. Meanwhile, Zhen sat down for a second to catch his breath. It was obvious that he was already tired and didn't have much strength left. The gorilla mutant didn't give the guy a chance to rest and lunged at him to attack, but at the same moment she was also exhausted and her life indicator was running low. The monster swung and made a strong strike with its paw but missed. Zhen jumped up lightning fast and dodged the blow. The guy deftly went around the monster and gave him a powerful blow. He rejoiced as his attack was very powerful and did a lot of damage. Zhen realized that it was time to finish off this monster and delivered a final series of blows and ended the fight with his powerful backhand. The horrible and ferocious gorilla monster fell to the floor. It was finally defeated by the guy. Zhen earned 7,200 experience points and became a second-rank warrior. At that moment outside the training room, one of Luo's friends was leaning against the door trying to hear something. He said that it looked like the fight was over and the guy was probably eliminated. Suddenly the door opened and Zhen appeared in front of the warrior's face. He looked at the guy in bewilderment. The warrior fell to the floor and screamed. He thought he was a ghost, as he was sure that the monster had eliminated the guy. While everyone present could not believe that the guy was still alive, Zhen turned to the employee of the center and said that it is necessary to clean this room. Mr. Luo was as shocked as everyone else. Everyone was discussing how a first-rank warrior who was training for the first time could defeat such a monster and raise his level to second. Everyone was wondering who he was. As Zhen moved along the corridor of the center, everyone paid attention to him, saying that he was the guy who defeated the 6th-level monster. Finally, Zhen found an employee who was helping with the selection of the training hall. He asked her to open another 6th-level hall. The girl was shocked by his request. They approached the screen and began to choose a monster. Zhen stopped the girl, looking out for a new opponent. She hesitantly confirmed the guy's choice. Zhou went to his training room again. Everyone looked at him in surprise. The employee said that the guy wanted to fight a level 6 mutant viper. People started saying that this guy was crazy. Some even wanted to bet on the guy to see if he could come back this time. At this time, the rumors about Zheng had reached the command center. Such news had everyone in a state of confusion. The man sitting in the chair watching the news about this guy was Zhang Chen, a 7th-ranked warrior. He was quite curious about who this Zhou was. Zhang Chen was visited by his employee. The man asked him if he was sure that Zhou Zhen was a 2nd-rank warrior. He was told that he was sure of this information, and moreover, before the battle with the mutant gorilla, Zhen was a 1st-rank warrior. Chen ordered all the cameras to turn on and broadcast live to the screens of the main hall and showed the guy's training. The employee was surprised at such an order, as this required the permission of the other party. Zhang Chen replied that he would take care of it and said to do as he commanded. Lighting his cigar, the man said that it didn't matter if Zhou Zhen won the fight, but they could definitely make money from this broadcast. In the main hall of the center, a screen was turned on. People began to discuss what was happening, saying that a 2nd-ranked warrior had challenged a 6th-level mutant viper. Someone said that the difference was very great, because even a 7th-rank warrior wouldn't dare to do such a thing. The broadcast started. A poisonous fog could be seen on the screen. People were wondering what was going on. Had the guy already been eliminated? Zhen was in the training room, completely shrouded in a thick fog. He was tense and extremely focused on his opponent. The guy took out a vial of red liquid. He thought it was likely that the antidote from the game could be used here and drank the contents of the vial. After drinking the antidote, Zhen prepared to attack and told his monster opponent to show how tough he was. The eyes of the huge mutant viper shone in the semi-darkness of the training hall. It showed itself and was ready to fight. Meanwhile, everyone was watching the boys battle. The haze made it hard to see the fight. Everyone marveled at how Zhen could last so long in the poisonous fog and how a person could be so fast. Obviously Zhen was tired. He realized that level 6 monsters were much harder than he thought. Despite being tired, the guy was very happy. He was able to level up again and raise his rank to 3rd. After Zhen noticed that there was a broadcast and his fight was publicized, he thought he should go and deal with it. The broadcast of the fight was over. The audience still didn't understand who won the fight. Due to the fog there was poor visibility and the outcome was not clear. At that moment the door opened and Zhen stepped outside. One of the center workers approached him, saying that the manager Zhang Chen wanted to see him. The guy replied that he would like to chat with him too. Zhen walked into the manager's office and looked at the man. He said he was waiting for an explanation about broadcasting without his permission. Zhang Chen got nervous and asked Zhou Zhen to calm down, saying that they would discuss everything now. At this moment, a girl working at the center entered the office. She brought a box that was covered. The contents inside could not be seen. The manager showed the contents. There were different crystals and a gold card. The man said that they would compensate him for his expenses today as an apology. They had and his talent. Zhen could become a 6th-ranked warrior in just a year. The guy replied that he didn't want to do that and then left the office, slamming the door. Meanwhile, in the main hall of the center, everyone was discussing the warrior who had defeated the 2 strongest mutants, because such talented people in Titan could be counted on a few fingers. Lan Shi looked around and couldn't find Zhenya. A little while later, a warrior came into the manager's office. He said that Zhang Chen had been too nice to some third-rank warrior. The man replied that a person's potential cannot be measured by their rank. The manager leaned over the table. He said that he shouldn't have started the live broadcast. After all, he had lost such a promising warrior because of it. Zhen walked out of the training center. He was quite puzzled. The guy looked at his blade and realized that it was completely ruined. Suddenly he remembered a man who owned a gun store and thought he should buy a new dagger there. When Zhen came to this store, there was a huge building in front of him. Seeing it, the guy was very surprised and realized that he had sold his wolf skins too cheaply. After the guy entered the store, the owner greeted him and they sat down to talk and drink coffee. Brother Chong asked Zhen if he was able to become a third-rank warrior in just a few days. Zhen smiled and said that there was nothing special about it, he just tried a little harder than others. The man laughed and replied that if the guy didn't want to talk, then he should at least come up with a normal excuse. Zhen then put the cup on the table and said that he came here to buy his gear. Brother Chong replied that he would be happy to help him and offer some options. The guy also added that he had something for Brother Chan. He took it out of his pocket and asked if he would accept it. The item was the web of a blue glowing spider, a material best suited for making gear. The man was very happy to have such a specimen. Chan took out a magnifying glass and scrutinized the web. He said that it was a rare material and could only be obtained from a ghost spider. The man looked at Zheny with surprise. He said that it seems that the rank theory doesn't work at all for the guy. Zhen listened to him and just smiled back. Brother Chong replied that right now he only had enough money for 1 meter of web and could pay 15 green crystals. Zhen said without hesitation that he agreed. With joy, Chong climbed on the table and hovered over Zhen. He said that he was happy to get such a valuable material and now he would go to the workshop and make a free weapon for Zhen's brother. The boys went down to the production hall. Zhen looked around and said he didn't think they were using such an old way of forging weapons. Chong replied that machine-made weapons are sold to ordinary people, and warriors need weapons with good conductivity. Zhen said he knew a little about conductivity, that star power could be injected into weapons and strengthen their characteristics. Chong confirmed this and said he would use the blue web to create for him a weapon with a conductivity of at least 13%. Chan got ready to work and said that perhaps he could use the web to break the myth of the weapon's 15% conductivity. The man began the process. First he melted the web and added it to the rest of the metal, then forged and shaped the weapon and cooled the finished product. Brother Chong finished his work. He presented Zheny with the finished blade and said that he was very lucky to have a new weapon. Zhen took the blade and realized that it was very light. The guy juggled it a few times. He clenched the blade tightly in his hand. A glow and a powerful burst of energy appeared around it. Brother Chong was surprised at such power, which could mean that Zhen was an 8th or 9th rank warrior, as he had guessed. Then the man saw that the blade had a conductivity of 20. And such a weapon could be worth at least 1 purple crystal. For a moment he regretted giving it to Zhen for free. Finally the guys left the store. Zhen thanked Brother Chan and bid him farewell. The man told him to leave quickly before he changed his mind about charging Zhen. Returning to his store, Brother Chan said that since he had made such a weapon once, he could do it again. Zhen was walking down the street of Titan City. 3 warriors were walking towards him. As they passed each other, one of the warriors noticed that the guy who passed by was the warrior from the training center they had a fight with. Boss Luo said that fighting was not allowed at the center, but now they were outside and could go beyond chatting. His friend said fearfully that this guy was very strong, since he was able to defeat a mutant gorilla all by himself. Suddenly, the man got angry and punched his friend, saying that he didn't understand anything and Zhen had won through some tricks. After all, he was only a 3rd-rank warrior. Suddenly Luo remembered that Zhen had only rank 1 when he entered the training center. The other warrior told him that he was, but after 2 battles, he had raised his rank by 2 levels. Boss Luo became furious and hit this warrior too, saying that he didn't care what rank Zhen was now and ordered him to eliminate the guy. At this time, Zhen walked over to a girl who was selling flowers and picked one for himself. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him and said that they had met again. Behind the guy's back stood Luo's boss and his two friends. Luo said menacingly that now they would see if he would defy them this time too. Zhen turned around and asked the guys in surprise who they were. The warriors were shocked at how this guy dared to forget them. Boss Luo's self-esteem was hurt. He shouted loudly and ordered his friends to traumatize this impudent guy. In the next instant, Zhen kicked one of the warriors and he flew off and hit a huge pillar. Using his unrealistic speed, he went around the second warrior and dealt him a devastating blow. It was the turn of the main opponent, Mr. Luo, who did not expect that Zhen could defeat his warriors. It was at this moment that a very loud noise was heard and the flower girl was startled and terrified. The pillar that the first warrior hit cracked in half and started to fall. Zhen noticed that the girl could get hurt before she could dodge the danger. The guy Lightning came back, picked up the girl in his arms and saved her life. Then he went around the boss Luo and being behind his back, Zhen pushed him in the back with his foot. Mr. Luo flew towards the falling pillar. The people gathered around watched in horror. The man was lucky. The falling pillar didn't hit him and he was unharmed. Zhen asked the girl if she was all right and she said she was fine. Luo quickly stood up and yelled at Zhen. He asked how dare he touch him, doesn't the guy know who he is? Zhen replied that he doesn't care whoever he is or what his connections are. After all, he was the one who provoked him first. The man ordered Zhen Yu to kneel in front of him and apologize. Otherwise his Luo family would make him regret everything he had done. After listening to everything the man said, Zhen gave him a stern look. The very next second he appeared behind his back and struck Luo's leg. Luo's boss fell down and screamed loudly in great pain. Everyone around was shocked. People didn't expect that Zhen could go against Luo's family. Zhen looked at the fallen warrior and said that he hates threats the most, so Luo got what he deserved. The man with fear and tears in his eyes asked for Zhen's forgiveness. He realized that he had fought this guy for nothing. Zhen turned around and walked away from the scene. Boss Luo was still lying there screaming in pain. People were discussing among themselves that this guy was very brave since he wasn't afraid of Luo's family and his act was brave and stupid at the same time. Zhen thought that in this world the strongest survive and if Luo's family becomes an obstacle in his way, he wouldn't mind stepping over them. Luo was soon taken to the hospital and given the necessary care and treatment. The man lay on a bed and rested, his leg in a cast. As the doctor was about to leave, he approached Luo's father and told him that his son's leg was shattered and even if he recovered, there would be serious consequences. Luo's father was shocked. He asked if this injury would affect the possibility of rank promotion. The doctor replied that it would, since his channels were damaged. Mr. Luo was furious at what he heard. He shouted that this couldn't happen to his son. At this point, the injured Luo intervened and shouted that all this happened because of a guy named Zhou Zhen and his father should avenge him. His father got angry and said that he had no right to cry and cause pity. Luo's father looked out the window and thought about how a third-rank warrior was able to beat up a fourth-rank warrior. Who was this Zhou Zhen? The man called his assistant Aben and ordered him to find out all the information about this Zhou Zhen. Aben said he would do it. Filled with anger and rage, Mr. Luo said that whoever this guy was, he dared to touch his son and so he would have to pay for what he had done. Thanks for watching till the end. What did you think of our recap? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos.